Chapter 296. Outside Marshall Union City, hundreds of thousands of rebel soldiers surrounded it, almost completely surrounding the city that had stood tall for dozens of years. Among the rebel soldiers, a man riding a tall horse slowly stepped out. It was Yun Tianyang. "Let Qin Yuezhi come out to see me." It was Yun Tianyang's first time in Marshall Union City, but he did not have the slightest reverence for this city that symbolized the world's holy land of martial arts. Naturally, someone on the city wall immediately retorted, "How dare you? Alliance Master Qin is the leader of the world's martial art. How can you see him just because you want to?" Yun Tianyang's lips curled into a cold smile. On his noseless face, it looked somewhat terrifying. Attack the city. He did not even have the time to say another word. He directly waved his hand and ordered the attack. "Wait!" A loud shout came from the city wall. It was Qin Yuezhi who spoke. "Yun Tianyang, do you dare to fight me?" Yun Tianyang laughed loudly. Then, his smile faded and he said coldly, "Let's fight." When Axiu arrived at the battlefield, Yun Tianyang and Qin Yuezhi were in the middle of a fierce battle. The two of them were fighting with all their might. They did not hold back when they attacked, almost disregarding their own defense. Yun Tianyang's chest had been punched several times, and he almost vomited blood. Qin Yuezhi's arm was full of wounds from swords. Axiu arrived and saw that Yun Tianyang was still alive and kicking. She had just breathed a sigh of relief when she felt something was wrong. "Be careful!" Before her voice could travel across the battlefield, a ray of light shot directly from the top of Marshall Union City and accurately landed on Yun Tianyang's heart. The scene seemed to freeze at that moment. Even Qin Yuezhi was a little stunned. He only came back to his senses when Yun Tianyang's figure slowly fell. A cold light flashed in Alliance Master Qin's eyes. He was about to go forward and finish off Yun Tianyang with his sword when a figure flashed in front of him. A woman had already appeared and supported Yun Tianyang. "Master, I've let you down." Yun Tianyang covered his chest with one hand and said with difficulty, "I wanted to kill Qin Yuezhi and force that person to fight with me. Then, Master, you would wait for an opportunity to attack. I didn't expect." At this point, Yun Tianyang could not continue. He didn't expect that after risking his life, he wouldn't even be able to see the face of his final opponent. "Why are you so stupid?" Axia held his back, her calm eyes rippling. Yun Tianyang coughed out a few mouthfuls of blood. Suddenly, he pulled himself together and raised his voice. "Master, look behind us." The Martial Alliance wreaked havoc on the world. They were domineering and did not win the hearts of the people. As martial artists, if we don't plead for the people, how are we different from farmers in the countryside? Axia looked back in a daze and saw the 100,000 soldiers of the Northwest Army. What she saw was a pair of eyes filled with unwillingness, but also hope. "Pleading for the people?" Axiu murmured. "You're right." She slowly stood up and unsheathed the sword that she had nurtured for 20 years from its scabbard. The sword nurturing technique that she had meticulously prepared for a strong enemy seemed to have disappeared as well. However, Axia did not feel it was a pity at all because she knew that she no longer needed that kind of thing. The art of sword nurturing was to nurture the power of the sword, and she already had the power of the world. The power of the world could not be reversed. And in the eyes of the Red Tail in Marshall Union City, Axiu's extremely rich providence was suddenly released and immediately retracted. It was as if she had collected the providence of the entire Northwest Army. At this moment, Axiu seemed to have become the spokesperson of the heavenly Tao. Every move she made was filled with an unstoppable majesty. Qin Yuezhi, who was standing in front of her, could no longer say a word. He couldn't even escape as he was instantly split into two. The unsheathing of the sword, the killing, everything seemed so natural, as if it was the right thing to do. It was as if Qin Yuezhi was born to die at this moment. "Master?" Yun Tianyang was shocked. The terrifying power of the sword had completely exceeded his imagination. Following that, a wave of ecstasy surged in his heart. Yun Tianyong finally realized what had happened. She had broken through. His master had finally broken through. Yun Tianyong, who knew how terrifying his master was, could not imagine what realm she would reach if she improved further. Regardless if it was the legendary realm of shattering the void, it was definitely not something that the martial alliance could withstand. However, just as Yun Tianyong was overwhelmed with emotions, an unhurried voice sounded in front of them. "Unsheathe your sword. Don't disappoint me." Yun Tianyong turned his head and saw the silver-robed man that he had been thinking about day and night. He was standing calmly in front of them. The eagerness in his words made Yun Tianyong feel lost. His master had stepped into the legendary realm, so shouldn't he be alarmed or even afraid? Axia held her sword with one hand and said lightly, "Senior, you entered this realm 20 years ago. With such painstaking arrangements, could it be that you want to use Axia to gain insights into martial arts?" For the actions of the person in front of her, Axia could only think of one possibility. He was deliberately nurturing himself, to nurture an opponent that could fight him. Yun Tianyong was also an extremely intelligent person. He instantly understood his master's intentions. Immediately, he felt like he had fallen into an icehouse. Could all of this be a scheme by this person? However, the silver-robed man shook his head gently. "I only want to help you." Axia snorted coldly and without another word, she unsheathed her sword. This sword was far more terrifying than the previous one, and it was even more ethereal. At this moment, Axiu's sword finally gave birth to the power of a law. It was completely different from the martial arts of this world, but it represented the essence of the world. At this moment, Yun Tianyong was the top-tier martial artist closest to this sword. So, he became the representative of this world, feeling the wonderful power of this sword. This was not a power that mortals could control. For some reason, Yun Tianyong had this thought in his mind. Under his expectant gaze, the sword finally stabbed the silver-robed man. More accurately, it stabbed the other's extended finger. The sword and the fingertip collided, making a terrifying sound. Then, Axiu's sword broke in the middle. The sword broken. Yun Tianyong was shocked. He quickly looked up and saw that the silver-robed man's extended finger had some blood on it. "After all, you are a world breaker who broke through by yourself. How can you hurt me?" The silver-robed man looked at Axia with interest, and the injury on his hand healed in the blink of an eye. Yun Tianyong's face was pale. He was in deep despair. He didn't know how to kill an opponent like this. On the contrary, Axiu's eyes were still determined. She turned around and looked at Yun Tianyong. "Look closely. Master will teach you the last sword skill." Yun Tianyong was shocked. He saw Axiu's right index finger and middle finger together. She pointed at the silver-robed man. From Axiu's finger, Yun Tianyong felt a strong sword mind. His heart was filled with hope. "Is this a sword in the heart?" Axiu stared at her fingertip and whispered, "This sword, pang!" A silver shadow flashed. It was the silver-robed man who punched the back of Axiu's head. She fainted. Chapter 297. Crescent World. In the Martial Union City headquarters, when Axiu woke up again, the flames of war that engulfed the world had already subsided. This place had once again become a martial arts sacred land in the hearts of the world. It was even more sacred than before the chaos. This was because many people had seen with their own eyes that goddess Zhongli, who had killed the Martial Union's alliance leader, Qin Yuezhi, had been abducted by a mysterious silver-robed man. Hence, in the rumors of the pugilistic world, this silver-robed patriarch already had multiple identities as the founder of the Martial Alliance, a mighty figure of the upper realm, and the world's #1 expert. "Are you awake?" A gentle voice rang in her ear. Axiu suddenly opened her eyes and looked to her side. She saw Red Tail looking at her with a calm smile. Senior Red Tail. Axiu felt like she had returned to 20 years ago, the afternoon when she followed her senior sister to sneak into the Alliance headquarters. Now that 20 years had passed, she was no longer the girl from back then. However, Senior Red Tail did not seem to have changed at all. If you're awake, let's begin. Red Tail's smile became more radiant. His tone was very cheerful, but Axiu felt an inexplicable sense of oppression. As soon as Red Tail finished speaking, he felt a flash of light beneath him. He was lying on a strange Dharma circle. The complicated and extremely profound patterns made her feel dizzy. This had nothing to do with one's realm. As an ancient person, she had obviously never learned plane geometry. With a thought, she subconsciously used the nomological powers she had just gained insight into. A sword intent appeared out of thin air. However, the sword intent had not even been born for a moment before it was crushed by a thought. Not a single trace was left behind. Axiu immediately felt a pain in her heart. Her head felt like it was being torn apart. It was a sign that her sword intent had been destroyed. Only then did she realize that the silver-robed senior was standing by the side, looking calmly in her direction. He did not have the mask on his face, so Axiu could see his face. He's so young. Axiu soon did not have the time to marvel at Gunan's youth. This was because she realized that the array beneath her feet was getting brighter, and there was a strange mist lingering around her. This was in fact fate. Under the effects of the special array, it was temporarily manifested. The mist swirled in midair and gradually formed the shape of a mirror. On the other hand, Xiao felt her eyelids getting heavier and heavier. She, who was already injured, started to lose consciousness. When her consciousness blurred, a wisp of her soul left her body and went straight into the mirror. Sure enough, she needs to be awake. Red Tail could not help but sigh softly when he saw this scene. Of course, she and Gunan did not wait for Xiao to wake up and greet her. In fact, she had already tried to strip away Xiao's luck and make it into a fog mirror. This break world-class lucky child, which had never been seen before, was very different. Usually, Red Tail would seal off the consciousness of the children of Providence, cutting off the connection between their souls and the outside world, and then snatching away their providence. However, Axiu's luck had already begun to fuse with her soul and could not be separated completely. In other words, after reaching the break world level, she was half a representative of the plane. She was not just lucky. So, Red Tail had to wait for her soul to wake up. Then, she would find a way to take her soul out and put it into the fog mirror. Axiu's soul was already break world class. This method could only be used by Gunan, and it was unknown whether or not it would succeed. The luck power slowly gathered up. It wrapped up Axiu's soul and put it into the mirror. Mr. Red Tail saw that things were going smoothly, but he felt something was wrong. He could not help but look at Gunan. Gunan guided the providence and put it into the fog mirror. He shook his head and said, "The level of the translation method is too low. It looks like the children of Providence at this level have reached their limit." The Qing Qiu's translation method was for the superclass. Even if it was the complete version of the method, it was the same for the race. Gunan used the world's providence to push the children of Providence to break world class, but the other parts of the translation method could not keep up. He closed the soul, but he was unable to separate the soul from the luck. To make the fog mirror, if Gunan had not been the one to control it, the fog mirror would have been broken by the big amount of luck. In fact, no translation method could involve the break world part. Those who studied this were cultivators below the break world level. How could they have the power to make it to break world class? Only Gunan, who was a special case, would go back and study the translation method after he had surpassed the break world level. Let's see if the fog mirror made by the break world can bring us some surprises. Otherwise, doing this will not be worth it. Disregarding the requirements to make the break world class, The complicated process of getting the break world-class materials was something that even Lan Si would have trouble doing. Only Gu Nan could do it. That way, there was no way to promote it. The efficiency of the production was too low. The light of the formation slowly disappeared. The yard was quiet again. Axu's body turned into dust. Only a small mirror was left on the ground. Red Tail walked forward and picked up the mirror. The surface of the mirror was covered by a thin layer of fog. It was no different from an ordinary fog mirror. The fog was even thinner. Even the surface of the mirror could be seen. Red Tail could even see her own face. It was blurry. Red Tail raised the mirror higher. She looked at the surface of the mirror. She wanted to find something unusual. However, at this moment, a woman's face suddenly appeared on the mirror and pounced at her. That shocked her. Red Tail almost threw the fog mirror away. It was hard for her to calm down. Her forehead was covered in a cold sweat. "Mister, look." She quickly gave the fog mirror to Gu Nan. She pointed at the face. Gu Nan looked down. It was the face of Ashio. She had lost her spirit. It was like she only had instinct left. She was like a ghost trapped in the mirror. She was madly trying to escape, but it was a futile struggle. Gu Nan smiled. He put the fog mirror on the ground. Red Tail looked at him in confusion. Just as he was about to ask, the mist mirror suddenly jumped. The clear sound of the mirror hitting the ground echoed in the yard. Red Tail thought the atmosphere was a bit creepy. With her power, she did not care about ghosts, but the scene in front of her was too weird. This is interesting. However, Gu Nan picked up the fog mirror with interest and wiped away the fog on it. He passed it to Red Tail and said, "Find someone to complete the mission on this as soon as possible." "Yes." Red Tail hurriedly answered. When she took the fog mirror, she could still feel the mirror gently vibrating. Chapter 298. Red Tail was a genius. The complexity and concealment of the reincarnation organization determined that many management talents were actually unable to take on the position of the organization's leader. However, Red Tail could. Even the White Mist organization she had created in the White Bone world was shockingly efficient. In 3 short months, the Break World-class Fog Mirror's world mission was mostly completed. Of course, this was due to the White Mist's reasonable allocation of people, but it also had to do with Gu Nan's support. In 3 months, he had defeated 6 reincarnation organizations in the White Bone world. If Bai Qiaozhen had not come looking for him in the end and asked him to keep a low profile, he would have taken in all the agents in the White Bone world. Ever since Gu Nan displayed the power of laws at the Star Lord level in the Battle of Tilyuoshi, everyone in the worlds had been talking about him. After all, he was a Star Master. Even if he did not have an astral world, and his power had not increased, ordinary Break World people could not compete with him. Of course, Gu Nan's people wanted to develop in the White Bone world. They had to respect White Bone real leaders' attitude. They could not be too arrogant. So, the White Mist organization became a combination of a few reincarnation organizations. They gathered many agents and put all of their efforts into the Break World Fog Mirrors translation. On this day, Gu Nan's real body was sitting in the God Kingdom. The evil God Hall suddenly sent him a message. Private Instance Dungeon, Crescent World, is open. Gu Nan was shocked. He quickly opened the interface of the Private Instance Dungeon. He saw the Crescent World, which had been nowhere to be seen before, was now standing at the top of all the instance dungeons. Its icon had already turned bright, and it shone brightly with the splendid world beside it. The Break World Fog Mirror's luck is more concentrated. Many of the missions are focused on the same place. Gu Nan understood what was going on. The fog mirror made by Ashio had more missions than the normal fog mirror, but there was no difference in difficulty. Gu Nan knew there were many missions, but he did not expect the missions to push the Crescent World's progress to 100%. The Crescent World's private instance dungeon was not open yet. Gu Nan had to clear it with a full team before the God Messengers could attack it. Without hesitation, Gu Nan decided to go to the inner world to clear the instance dungeon. After all, to level up to level 7, he had to level up the Evil God Hall to level 2. He also needed more sin points. Sin points could only be obtained by killing Godmasters, but points would have to be obtained through more instance dungeons. After the Evil God's temple materialized, the private dungeon interface also displayed more information. The general situation of the Crescent World dungeon could be seen at a glance. The background information was ignored by Gu Nan. Gu Nan knew it was similar to the real Moon World. The number of people in this dungeon was 3, and the final quest objective was to kill the silver-robed ancestor? Gu Nan was stunned for a long while before he turned around to look at the mission's background. It was to help Goddess Zhongli and the Northwestern Army overthrow the Martial Alliance's tyrannical rule. Gu Nan couldn't help but laugh involuntarily, feeling a little strange. It was just a quest, so he didn't really care about helping the people on the other side. He was just a little curious. Could the silver-robed patriarch in the dungeon have been created based on him? If he had perfectly inherited his strength, then the difficulty of the mission would be a little ridiculous. Inner world. After so many years, Gu Nan's soul once again stepped into this place. This time, he did not rely on the help of others, but on his own strength. The difference between a star leader and a break world person was that the rules they created for themselves were complete. They were recognized by the world and could even lead a world. Entering the all-heaven star path again, Gu Nan's perception of this place was completely different from before. The world that had turned into a ball of light and the Star Lord that had turned into a dot of light were the same as before, but when Gu Nan looked again, he could see even more things. Most of the Star Masters did not conceal their auras, and Gu Nan could even tell which star realm some of them came from. Of course, most of the Star Masters did not have their own star realm. In the inner world, they were looking for a suitable plane to capture its source. There were also Star Masters who already had star realms. They worked with others to break the plane and intercept the source to enrich themselves. These people had nothing to do with Gu Nan. He just wanted to find 2 companions here and clear the Crescent World dungeon. The Crescent World dungeon opened up, forming a small ball of light. Immediately, a few dots of light gathered, and 2 of them took the opportunity to enter the ball of light. The scene in front of Gu Nan changed, and he was in an inn. Beside him, there were 2 people, a man and a woman. The woman had a delicate and pretty face, and she was wearing a strange cloak that was filled with mysterious runes that looked like incantations. The man had the head of a leopard, and his body was covered in golden fur. He was not a pure-blood human. When the man with the leopard head saw Gu Nan, his eyes lit up. He said, "It is Mr. Gu Nan. You know me?" Gu Nan's eyes moved to the leopard head. "Of course I know you." The leopard head smiled. "You shocked a lot of people in the battle in Tiluoshur. Many people were interested in Gu Nan, the heavenly devil of the 9 serenities, who had suddenly appeared. After all, if they could subdue him when he was still a world breaker, he would be a super strong force that could grow. It was not until Gu Nan displayed the Star Master level rule in Tiluoshur that many people gave up on him. Gu Nan nodded and did not say anything. He did not react to the leopard head's words. Then, the 3 of them introduced themselves. The woman called herself Nye Shuangshuang, and the leopard head was called Bao Jin. He admitted that he did not have a star realm at the moment, and he hoped that Gu Nan could recommend one to him. "Don't talk nonsense. Let's start," Nye Shuangshuang interrupted him. Gu Nan had no objections. The 3 of them walked out of the inn, and a line of blood-red words appeared in the sky. Final goal: kill the silver-robed elder. First stage: assassinate martial arts union elite Li Jin. Power limit: level 4. Gu Nan, who had personally experienced the history of the Crescent Moon world, was naturally able to discern with a single glance that this mission probably started from killing Li Jin, followed Yun Tianyang and Axiu, and finally killed the silver-robed ancestor. It was a normal RPG dungeon. There were no weird settings. In other words, the difficulty was in the fighting. Thinking of that, Gu Nan's heart jumped. He said, "Let's go find the silver-robed elder." Bao Jin and Nye Shuangshuang looked at him. They were not surprised. Nye Shuangshuang said, "Okay. This plane has given us world-breaker power," Bao Jin said with a smile. "It is enough to kill anyone of the same level. In the plane of the inner world, it was impossible to have Star Master power. That was common knowledge. Star Masters did not stay in the plane for long, so they had to hurry." Chapter 299. Dr. Petmal Public /w3c/DTDXHTML1 0 transitional //n w3 /tr/xhtml1/dtd/xhtml1 transitional dtd htmlxmlns equals w3 /1999/xhtml head metatent equals text /html charset equals gbk /metatent equals ie equals edge equals 1 /metaname equals renderer tent equals webkit /title great web novels for free full novels for free /title incref equals rel equals canonical /metaname equals keywords tent equals free novels to download, full novels to read, web novels, full novels, free full novels /metaname equals description tent equals latest chapters of popular web novels, recommended ranking of the best web novels, site-wide advertising, free reading of all the best web novels, all the best web novels, all here. /metaname equals mobile agent, tent equals format equals HTML5. URL equals m//linkrel equals alternate media equals only sand max width 960px ref equals m//metaname equals applicable device tent equals PC /metatent equals no transform /metatent equals nosetap /linkrel equals stylesheet type equals text /css ref equals /assets /css/style css /headbottled/dtdd/ddd class equals info rise from the ashes and revive from the ashes. The sea turned to dust and the lightning dried up. That wisp of mist approached the earth once again. The shackles of the world were broken, and a whole new world revealed a mysterious corner /dd/dldlt/dtdd/ddd class equals info about the legend of the Dragon King. Following the advancement of soul guidance technology, humans on the Dolua continent conquered the oceans and discovered 2 more continents. Soul beasts also went extinct with the endless hunting of human soul masters. The king of soul beasts that had been sleeping for countless years in the Star Doe forest finally /dd/dldt/dtdd/ddd class equals info in the tranquil sun province of the empire. There was a very small and inconspicuous noble territory called the Snow Eagle Territory. The story began here. After Desolate Era, Swallowing Star, Story of the 9 Cauldrons, Coiling Dragon, Stellar Transformation, Inch Light, Legend of Star Peak class equals info in the Great Thousand Worlds, where planes intersected, there were thousands of races and heroes gathered. Heavenly sovereigns from the lower planes were living legends in the Great Thousand Worlds, pursuing the path of sovereign. The endless fire realm was controlled by the Flame Emperor, and 10,000 flames could burn the sky. /dd/dldlt/dtdd/ddd class equals info. A single thought could create the sea. A single thought could create Mulberry Field. Slaying 1,000 devils with a single thought, slaying 10,000 immortals with a single thought. Solipsism. Eternal/dd/dldlt/dtdd/ddd class equals info. I only have mortal roots, a mere mortal. I am Mo Wuji. I want immortality. /DD/DLH3 fantasy /H3 Uli class equals top strong author. The first young master of the 9 realms popularity. B style equals color red. 6718806/lily/lily/lily/lily/lily/lily/ll3 urban romance /H3 Uli class equals top strong author. Mountain Temple popularity. B style equals color red. 3444626/lily/lily/lily/lily/lily/ll3 immortal sword cultivation /H3 Uli class equals top strong author. Yun Xian popularity. B style equals color red. 71240/. B/P//lily//////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////////// strong author. Pen dream of the stars popularity. B style equals color red. 32797/b/p/lily //3 historical fiction /h3 uli class equals top strong author. Old White Bull popularity. B style equals color red. 2501214/b/p/lily //lily //3 science fiction /h3 uli class equals top strong author. The Mirror. Next door popularity. B style equals color red. 386246/b/p/lily //lily 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 latest update /h3 Serious Maiden 7923 42/Lily Historical Fiction Umr 7923 42/Lily Romance Novel Millet Porridge 7923 42/Lily Xianxia Cultivation Let Me Laugh 7923 42/Lily Fantasy Scholar Remnant Cloud 7923 42/Lily Romance Fiction Shu Qin 7923 42/Lily Romance Novels NS First Heart 7923 42/Lily Urban Novel Fairy Lotus 7923 42/Lily City Novel Gone to the World 7923 41/Lily Urban Novel Rue Wenjun 7923 41/Lily Science Fiction Talk to Wine 7923 41/Lily Science Fiction Novel Wan Qing Dao 7923 41/Lily Fantasy Novel Dongfang Buhui 7923 41/Lily Historical Novel BB Sauce 7923 41/Lily Romance Novel Mr. Jiang 7923 41/Lily Historical Novel Turning Bullet 7923 41 Lily Xianxia Cultivation Zhui Wuchen 7923. 41 Lily Urban Novel Lang Feng 7923. 41 Lily Romance Novel Shuang Shuang. CS 7923. 41 Lily Urban Novel Z Fei Wu 7923. 41 Lily Fantasy Novel Wang Zai Lao Mantu 7923. 41 Lily Historical Novel Scarlet Moon 7923. 41 Lily Urban Novel V 7923. 41 Lily Online Game Novel Wind and Rain Shang Liemo 7923. 41 Lily Urban Novel Fuyao Salted Fish 7923. 41 Lily Urban Novel Shirqian 7923. 41 Lily Fantasy Novel Flawless Golden Peak 7923. 41 Lily Urban Novel Little Snow Ginseng 7923. 40 Lily Urban Novel Flying Brotherly 7923. 40 Lily Historical Novel Tingyu Hourglass 7923. 40 Lee /ul 3 Popular Novel /h3 Ula Small Class equals Strike Gray, Mayues /Smallum Class equals S1 Romance /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray, Old Mountain Temple /Smallum Class equals S1 Romance /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray, Ascension /Smallum Class equals S1 Fantasy /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray, Against the Heavens /Smallum Class equals S1 Fantasy /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray Yao Yao Sienner /Smallum Class equals S1 Romance /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray Falling Dust /Smallum Class equals S1 Science Fiction /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray One Thought /Smallum Class equals S1 Urban /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray Pen Gentian /Smallum Class equals S1 Urban /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray and Shaoling /Smallum Class equals S1 Romance /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray Nan Enin /Smallum Class equals S1 Romance /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray Dusty Life /Smallum Class equals S1 Romance /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray Books of Anhui Cuisine /Smallum Class equals S1 History /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray Gu Ranjin /Smallum Class equals S1 History /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray Lovesickness /Smallum Class equals S1 Fantasy /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray Third Young Master Tang /Smallum Class equals S1 Fantasy /m Li /ul 3 Collection List H3 Eula Small Class equals Strike Gray Dusty Life /Smallum Class equals S1 Romance /m Lily Small Class equals Strike Gray Silence /Smallum Class equals S1 Romance /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray Old White Bull /Smallum Class equals S1 History /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray Big Sun /Smallum Class equals S1 City /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray Chi Chinquan /Smallum Class equals S1 Romance /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray Xiao Xiao Shinger /Smallum Class equals S1 City /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray 9 Worlds First /Smallum Class equals S1 Fantasy /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray G LT /Smallum Class equals S1 City /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray Old Mountain Temple /Smallum Class equals S1 Romance /m Lila Small Class equals Strike Gray Tomato /Smallum Class equals S1 city slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, and Shaoling slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray. Een Xiaobao slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, picking flowers and brushing willows slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, Mayue slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, princess of Jean slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Li slash ul 3 wonderful book slash H3 Ula small class equals strike gray, and Shaoling slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, Qi Qingquan slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray. 9 worlds first slash smallm class equals S1 fantasy slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray. G LT slash smallm class equals S1 city slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, exquisite as a jade slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, snowy mountain slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, warm and beautiful slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, tomato slash smallm class equals S1 city slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, midnight whisper slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, purple tassel slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, luoji slash smallm class equals S1 history slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, Ichen slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, Xiao Yun slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, I am superfluous slash smallm class equals S1 fantasy slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, night rain stars slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Li slash ul 3 latest novel slash H3 Eula small class equals strike gray, wind moving mandala slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, salted fish salad slash smallm class equals S1 city slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, a dazzling eye slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, moon pavilion slash smallm class equals S1 science fiction slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, mountain haswood slash smallm class equals S1 city slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, giant grape slash smallm class equals S1 science fiction slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, feng wei liang slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, sway ho zhu slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, feng wei liang slash smallm class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, 20-year unicorn slash smallm class equals S1 science fiction slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, I am the Lord slash smallm class equals S1 science fiction slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, cloud rising peak slash smallm class equals S1 fantasy slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, disobedient slash smallm class equals S1 science fiction slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray, clear T slash Smallum class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray 5 moxa slash smallum class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray Chiao Xiaomei slash smallum class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray running heat slash smallum class equals S1 fantasy slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray EZ slash smallum class equals S1 science fiction slash M slash Li slash ul slash ul. Chapter 307. The title starts with ad. End of ad on Title 1 Chapter 347 One more person slash H1 A style equals color. Hashtag 00F. Ref equals 5668844. HTML, next chapter slash attablilager border equals 0 table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left trtd slash tr slash tableyen. Wang chose a rather remote underground villa to carry out the stowaway. If he hadn't personally led the way, perhaps no one would have been able to find it accurately. "My lord, I've already sent someone to wait over there. Once your companion arrives, she will be informed of his location." Yen Weng moved closer to Gu Nan and tried to curry favor with him. After making it clear that Gu Nan absolutely cannot be offended, Yen Weng accompanied Gu Nan and waited for a long time, but he still didn't come. In the end, Gu Nan grew impatient and asked him to lead the way. He in no return had agreed on a time, but he didn't expect the latter to not show up. He was most likely delayed by something. Gu Nan was very patient when it came to quests, but not when it came to other things, especially when an NPC stood him up. After all, no return's existence was just a support. Having a helper was good, but not Gu Nan. If this mission required no return, then he wouldn't have been so calm. He would have used all sorts of clues to find no return's whereabout. On the other side, Lu Xian? Childish and immature? A Huan Fong Mei Zheng? Does the porcelain make a fuss first? Just hang? Fluttering strings? The little girl was wearing a strange cyan gauze dress. After she put it on, some clouds and mist naturally appeared and lingered around her body. Gu Nan couldn't help but take a few more glances at the clothes with their own special effects. If it weren't for the fact that there were special effects costumes in the game, he would have suspected that he had invented an Easter egg. "Sister Lu, is that person really as powerful as you say?" The girl in green was hiding behind Lu Xian. "Childish? Send the uranium to defend against them? The situation on the plains is tense. And the locust is sent to the embankment? Frequency copying Lu Xian? Claw mother of locust? Retraction? An overseas litigator? Moi? Retreat? Bridge to pay a load of chlorine? Kuzhao? Bahuang? Mi Liangyu? However, with that person's status, he probably wouldn't do something like eavesdropping on a little girl. Very powerful. Lu Xian Middle Eastern pronunciation of the word bear? Australia? Shoulder? Still waiting? Flounder radiance? Cowardly and cowardly retreat? Lies? Forgive me. The green-clothed girl, Zhong Dai, counted with her fingers and said, 10,000 years. Then he shouldn't be that powerful now, right? Even now, you're still better than your big sister Lu. Rank judgment embrace? Endure the collapse of the peddler? Stop the sieve of Civ? And fooling around? Pay the Sua family? Professional model? Sha Tan Li E Prey. I know, after a while, the group of 4 followed the underground tunnel and arrived in front of a strange flying ship. There were already some people waiting around. Yen Weng immediately said, "Please wait a moment." He didn't even ask the 3 of them to wait for him and quickly ran over, as if he was afraid that Gu Nan would ask him more questions. "What about Lu Xian? Do you want to play around with me?" "What a stupid word. Rose. Saddle? I promise to forgive you." Gu Nan looked at her and said expressionlessly, "I'm not joking." Lu Xian? Throwing away a steak? Is the Emperor in danger of a beautiful model? Dizzy from hanging? The Emperor secretly flirts with me? Pah! Miserable naked otter? Still? Xing chased Lao Ai away? The pawn shop swings and changes the crutch. The Emperor knocks on the door and accuses the nunnery. In this world, most of the rules were no longer applicable to Star Lords. As an existence that transcended the secular world, the Star Lords were not bound by most rules, and things like morals and laws were even more laughable. To them, the world itself could be recreated. Apart from things that could threaten their lives, they did not need to compromise with anything. Lu Xian? Lump? Winged Sing? Immortals favor the Cape Mother to be slaughtered? Bluff? Yu Qiu throw away the remonstrance? Jiunan Zhao Yu play? Old Jiu Huang knock slowly to invade the Uyghur? However, even among the Star Lords, there were not many who had such a thorough attitude towards the secular world. Most of them still retained some traces of being human. Not to mention others, a Star Lord like Zhong Qinghe, who was full of children, could not completely transcend the secular world. Otherwise, where did Zhong Dai come from? Just as the three of them were waiting for Yan Wang to negotiate, a spatial crack appeared from above, which immediately alerted everyone present. They were doing illegal immigration. If anyone found out about this, everyone would be wiped out. Who? Elder Yan, what's going on? Stop him, don't let him come out. The not very spacious underground was suddenly filled with all kinds of noises. This scene was like a group of brothel patrons who were preparing to go home and were blocked by the police. There were even people floating in the air, ready to attack the person coming out of the spatial passage, but not long after, they shrank back. Because the first thing that came out of the passage was a slender palm with golden light. Before the palm completely came out, a monstrous demonic intent appeared. The next moment, the young girl No Gui's figure completely appeared, and beside her was a pale uncle holding a sword. Gu Nan also recognized this person. It was the swordsman Uncle Purple Lightning, who was trapped in the Star World and sealed together with Shadow Song for 10,000 years. His name was Purple Lightning, and the sword in his hand was also called Purple Lightning. Right now, this sword called Purple Lightning was covered in purple ripples, and there was even a drop of blood sliding down the blade. Looking at the shocking demonic intent of the young girl No Gui, it was obvious that she had just finished a big battle and had not had time to stop. Something happened. No Gui brought the injured Purple Lightning in front of Gu Nan and said, "Well, since you're here, let's go." Gu Nan glanced at her and didn't bother to ask what it was about. This person had been hanging out with Red recently. It was most likely that something happened to Shadow Song and Purple Lightning. No Gui pointed at Purple Lightning beside her and said, "We need to bring one more person." Sure. Gu Nan's expression was indifferent. He didn't mind bringing a few people over. In any case, if it was really necessary, he could abandon these teammates and leave at any time. At that time, losing one was losing two was also losing, there was no difference. He didn't mind, but Yan Wang, who had just walked up to them, was like a thunderbolt to his head. He had spent a lot of effort to persuade two people to give up their spots. How did another one appear in the blink of an eye? But he didn't dare to complain. He didn't recognize Gu Nan at first, but he recognized this person at first glance. The combination of Buddha and demon. This was the reincarnation of Buddha, who had risen to fame recently. "Sir, this." Yan Wang's old face was bitter. He didn't know what to say. This was a stowaway, not a vacation. How could they just add people like this? Of course, he didn't dare say this to No Gui. He could only continue to persuade the other customers. Not long after, some of the people on the other side started to make a ruckus. "You just told us to give up 2 spots, and now you want us to give up again? Old man Yan, don't push your luck." A girl with a beautiful face and a youthful aura had a face full of anger at this moment. Chapter 308. AD on the title begins. AD on the title Ench1 text chapter 348 I've done this dungeon before /H1 A style equals color hashtag 00F ref equals iml next chapter /add border equals 0 table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left TRTD/TR/table. Many people knew that Gu Nan had already become a Star Lord. After all, T. Luo Shi had gone on a rampage once, and while the recent events in the Bone World had yet to spread, many people knew about them. As for young girl No Return's strength and background, not many people knew about it. Just as mentioned before, many people thought that she was a Star Lord with no Star Realm. Some people even thought that she hadn't become a Star Lord yet. If she hadn't obtained a portion of Solitary Destructive Sky's origin, her reputation would have been even lower. But even so, the person who dared to challenge No Return was clearly not an ordinary person. Yenweng's face was full of worry, but he didn't dare to ask Gu Nan for help, so he could only try to persuade the people on the other side. Actually, Yenweng didn't have many people to sneak in at a time. There were no more than 10 people at a time, and this time there were only 8. Other than Gu Nan's group, the people on the other side were split into 2 groups, with 3 people on each side, which corresponded to the remaining 6 people. Lu Xian? To Oval Hug? Yushan? Luo Yu? Award side Pu Pu Tu Na Ba Di Gather? Imperial Examination Carry Beard Evenly Carry Boat Huan Yi? Sui Yu Xiu Xiu? Sister Pu Pi Gua? Yaya? Luo? Gush Cover Bolts Dripping Forgive Lu Xian? Choke Shoulder Smoke Toreya? Neck Hollow Grow Vulgar Broken Grave Stand Upright? Waving Xian so resenting for summer knocking pure wrench. Then she pointed at Yenweng and said, those 2 groups of people, one is from the martial world, and the other should be from Tianfu. From a certain point of view, Gu Nan and No Return's level of contact was already too high, directly reaching the Star Lord level. For such small characters, why didn't Lu Xian? Questioning you. Gu Nan had some contact with the great martial arts world. Back then, there was a reincarnation mission of someone from there that passed through the Crescent world. Let's go. Seeing that everyone had arrived, Gu Nan had no intention of staying any longer. Lu Xian? Stagnant? Coward? Lie? Reigning in the mountains? Hui Jingshi? Johann Mun Wu Gui naturally had no objections. The few of them quickly arrived in front of the flying boat. Gu Nan patted Yenweng's shoulder. Who has a problem? The young and beautiful girl in modern attire raised her head and said, even if you're strong, you still have to be reasonable, right? Don't you understand first come, first served? Her 2 companions stood behind her at the same time, looking over cautiously. Of course, most of them were looking at the young girl, No Return. The 3 of them were world breakers. After all, those who were willing to go to God's world were people who were confident in their own power. Even if the 3 of them could not fight against the reincarnated Buddha, they could at least stall for a while. In this special situation, even if the other party was a Star Lord, they had to compromise. After all, if things went out of control, no one would be able to board the boat. The girl was certain of this. After being stubborn for a while, she smiled and said, if you want one of us to give up, it's not impossible. At this point, her voice came to an abrupt halt. Under the weak light, her shadow on the ground suddenly appeared, becoming a few shadow tentacles that dragged her whole body into the shadow. The girl's life force, soul, and rules were all extinguished at the same time. It was as if all traces of her existence in the world had been completely erased. The faces of the 2 people behind her changed, but they felt a chill under their feet. The same shadow tentacles touched their backs. There are enough spots. Let's go, Gu Nan said to the people next to him. When the 3 of them were swallowed by the shadow, there were 3 more spots. Even the other group of people avoided the awkward situation of having 1 spot taken up. The whole place was silent. No return, Lu Xian? Were they worth hot round ash? Rotten? Loose crotch? Turtle? Poo-tow? Morning dew? In his mind, he was already thinking about how to disassociate himself from the 3 people who had died. Only 2 people's gazes were fixed on Gu Nan from beginning to end. One of them was the little girl, Zhong Dai. She was not very experienced, so she did not think killing 3 people was a big deal. She thought this person was very strong. The other was Purple Lightning. His thoughts were a lot more complicated. When he first met Gu Nan, he was just an ordinary break-world person. Now, he was a Star Lord who shocked the sky. He knew that Gu Nan had advanced very quickly in his early years. He did not care about his level. Breaking through was as easy as eating and drinking. He did not expect that even the threshold of Star Lord could not stop him. No matter what Purple Lightning thought, the group finally stepped onto the flying ship. The flying ship broke through the dimension wall and entered the world of God. It was a smooth process. In fact, temporarily breaking the dimension wall did not require any special secret technique. It only required a special substance. The people of the heavens called it the Time Crystal Core. Using this special crystal core, breaking the dimension wall was not difficult. However, this kind of resource was very rare. It was usually controlled by the 13 heavens. Yen Weng had gotten one by chance, which was why he started this business. The world of gods. Gu Nan stood on the skeletons of the kingdom of the dead. Looking at the familiar scene, his eyes suddenly became distant. So, you are from the world of gods. No Return stood next to him. Her face looked surprised. She had seen Gu Nan become a world breaker. She did not think he was the reincarnation of a sky demon. She was curious about Gu Nan's background. Now, seeing Gu Nan's "I'm back" expression, she finally knew who he was. He was a visitor from another world. Gu Nan did not argue with that. He smiled and said, "You can think of it that way." He felt a bit sad. If he had come here in the first place, his development would have been much smoother. Not long after, a young man in a long gray robe came running. He was probably here to welcome Lu Xian. He blew the dumpling until it was dead. "Misters, why don't you come with us to where we are staying? Cure the collapse of the pan block? And Hui? Where is Kong Mao Ju? Sandro's grave." "Oh, this should be called the Holy Dead Grave," Gu Nan casually said. "Holy Dead Grave?" The young man next to him looked weird. "From what I know, the locations of the 3 Holy Lands are not fixed, and the Holy Dead Grave has 9 entrances. Even the real and fake ones are constantly changing." "Lu Xian? Loyal to the king? Huai Wei? Di Chen? Di Ji? Di Sanqing? Cao? Stunned skeleton Ba Jun Feng? Gu Fei Di Jia Feng Tame Gui? Jian Shun Xiang Mo? All 9 are real. Just find one of them and bring me there," Gu Nan said expressionlessly. "What are you talking about?" The young man in the gray robe raised his voice. His face looked mocking. "We have studied the Holy Dead Grave's entrance for 100 years. Even the natives here think so. What makes you say that?" Chapter 309. AD on title begins. AD on title Ench 1 Chapter 349 Undead Nation /H1 A style equals color hashtag 00F ref equals 5671743 HTML next chapter /add border equals 0 table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left tr/table. Of course, Gu Nan had cleared the Holy Undead Tomb dungeon before. In fact, he knew all the slightly famous dungeons in the Pantheon world, and had even cleared most of them himself. The 9 entrances to the Holy Undead Tomb actually correspond to 9 tombs, but they're all placed together. Gu Nan explained, "You guys think that Sandro is the only one buried there, so of course there's only one entrance. There was nothing special about the Holy Undead Tomb. It was just a place where 9 important necromancers were buried together. Each entrance corresponded to one, and each had a different way of opening it. In the legends of the undead nation, the legendary necromancer Sandro was buried in the holy undead tomb. Only Sandro's way of opening the door would naturally lead to only one entrance. Gunan's confident look stunned the young man in gray. However, deep-rooted beliefs were not easily changed. The young man still looked at Gunan suspiciously and muttered softly, "You make it sound like it's real." Gunan did not say anything else. In fact, with his personality, he would not even say the previous explanation. Perhaps it was because returning to the Pantheon world made him feel like he was back in the game. His speech and actions had become more casual. Even when facing ignorant NPCs, he did not mind teaching them some game experience as an elder, even if they might not understand. After a while, the group arrived at a magnificent yet slightly dilapidated city built entirely of white bones. This city did not have a famous name. It was called Skeleton City, but it was one of the few major cities in the undead nation. Its actual status definitely far exceeded its name. "The 3 of you can rest here. Once there's news of the entrance to the holy undead tomb, Duke will immediately inform the 3 of you. Loyalty? Beat the 4 elements to death, blow the Sea of Wrens?" Lambda Phi Duke, who was the grey-robed youth from before, and now he was busy with his own matters. "In fact, Luxian? Is it worth collecting waste gas? Scholar Tree Plaque? Main Wish? 4-string? Punishment? Giving Desert Sistanch Peach Tree Carving Mold? Alliance? Fu Tuadi with a posthumous title? Kalu Xian? Throwing Oxum? Polypus? How Xuanshin Atrus IV? Play? Tie it to Huan Qi? Rebuke the crumbling bones of the nunnery, remonstrating the Yulon Valet line to beat up Jing? Occupy the Lu Ping, squander the crooked crook? Rock Cloud Slumber? Purple Lightning was a top-break world person. Who knew when he would take that step and become a Star Lord? He was very sensitive to the strangeness of the world. Indeed. Young Lady No Return nodded. If you want to open a space rift here, ordinary break world people will have a hard time doing that. Even if it's me, I'm afraid there will be problems with spatial positioning. At this point, both of them turned to look at Gunan, as if they wanted to hear his opinion. Based on his understanding of the world of gods, he should have the most say in this. But Gunan had no intention of answering. Ever since Purple Lightning had mentioned space, his thoughts had been led astray, and he had entered into a comparison between the 2 worlds. Originally, Gunan had been looking for similarities between the world of gods and the game. He had found many similarities, such as the power systems, the Star Lords, and the gods. But when he actually came to the world of gods, which was extremely similar to the game, he realized that there were many differences between the 2. The most typical difference was in the worldview. Just as Purple Lightning had said, the space in the world of gods was very stable. The legend realm here, which was equivalent to the break world, had almost no ability to break through space, unless it was some special rule. Even a large number of gods, when they used space teleportation, would often have a situation where their landing point would deviate greatly. To put it bluntly, it was because space was too stable, and it was difficult to operate. Because of this, no one could casually enter someone else's god kingdom. It was completely different from the world of gods. On the other hand, even the entire system of the world was different between the 2. The world of gods was completely made up of the various Star Lords' astral realms. The remaining unoccupied territories were just not occupied by the Star Lords yet. But the world of gods was different. Here, the 11 primary planes had the most powerhouses, and all the god kingdoms, including the main gods, were just subsidiary planes that existed around the primary planes. The undead kingdom that Gunan and the others were currently in was one of the abandoned primary planes. It was filled with a large number of undead, and no gods came here to fight for faith. Gunan. No Return's slightly surprised voice roused Gu Nan from his deep thoughts. You seem to be absent-minded. Gu Nan came back to his senses and nodded. I just remembered something. You guys wait here for my news. I still have something to do. Wait for me to come back and we'll enter the holy tomb together. All right. No Return immediately agreed. She did not ask if Gu Nan needed any help. He would not be courteous with her anyway. Gu Nan's figure quickly disappeared, leaving only Purple Bolt and the young girl. No Return. Purple Bolt stared at Gu Nan's departing figure and said, I never thought that in just a few short years, he would have grown to such an extent. It might not be growth, No Return said expressionlessly. She had already determined that Gu Nan was the reincarnation of some god from the world of God. Just like herself, she had the memories and power of her past life. She had no bottlenecks in breaking through realms, and leveling up was as easy as eating and drinking. Violet Lightning touched the scabbard in his hand and smiled. Maybe we can investigate his background here. Even if we don't meet him in the future, it's never wrong to know more. Of course, Gu Nan did not know that the two had already guessed that he was the reincarnation of a god and wanted to investigate him from the world of gods. However, even if they knew, he would not care. The power of an evil god was untraceable. It was a power that belonged entirely to the players. Not many of the local gods knew about it. He suddenly stood up and left. Of course, it was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. He really had something to do. Gu Nan had never forgotten his purpose in coming to the world of gods. First, he wanted to hunt down suitable gods to earn sin point. Second, he wanted to find a suitable natural race to become his divine envoy. There were many suitable gods to hunt, but with Gu Nan's current strength, a god worth 2,500 sin points would not be easy to kill. At least, he did not have full confidence in killing him. That was why he took the initiative to bring Girl No Return along after hearing her request. This time, Gu Nan's target was inside the holy undead tomb. He was not in a hurry to kill it. On one hand, he needed to subdue a race and be on standby at any time. On the other hand, he needed some special tools to awaken the sleeping god in the holy undead tomb. With Gu Nan's understanding of the undead nation, it would be more convenient to deal with these two matters together. That was why he quickly chose a destination. Chapter 310. AD on the title begins. AD on the title Ench1 text Chapter 350 Blood Clan Maiden /H1 A style equals color #00F ref equals iml. Next chapter /Adablilager border equals 0 table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left trtd/tr/table skeleton city Lu Xian Zhongya C beta bottom thorn C Sai Now dd Feng Sun Chuyu Cut Pai Zhan Sun Chuyu See Enoa man dislike pushing handsome? Sister Lu, when are we going to the bloody city? Zhong Dai was like a real butterfly, jumping up and down in the room, surrounding Lu Xian? Childish Guang Lu? Umbrella? Lu Xian? Jiwei Chu Fu Si Ba Mu Mo Ba Ji? Sprain? Dai. Perch Lu Fu Lai? Nuo Mo? Lang Zhong Quan? Lang Shi Wei Jian? I don't care, I don't care. I want to see a vampire lady. Zhong Dai revealed a look of despair. This skeleton city is full of skeletons, it's so boring. Honestly speaking, the skeleton city was a gathering place for skeletal undead. It had everything from skeleton soldiers to bone dragons, so it was still quite interesting. But Zhong Dai had come all the way from the heavenly realm just to see the vampires in the stories. How could she be willing to waste time looking at skeletons? Little Zhong Dai was not old, but her strength was not weak either. She had steadily stepped into the ranks of extraordinaires, but she was still addicted to romance novels, especially vampire themes. However, just because he loved vampire-themed novels, he had specially smuggled himself into the Pantheon world to experience it. This was a little crazy. Luxian? To cure bolts and badgers? Cute and vulgar? Huang Fu Mu Shi? Melancholic Sakura? Yu Huan? And Huang was low? Kill Su Air? Blazing main round section? My sword is broken. This is probably the Star Lord. Luxian? Huang Fu of the Loyal Barn? Serving the tatami cape straw bad Minshi, however, because of Zhong Qinghe's attitude. Luxian? Planting Yi? Fat hug? Get together to masturbate? Benefits? Touch weapons and mediocrity? Intruder? How about this? I'll have Duke take you around Sanguinary City. You have to be obedient, understand? Do you want to hug me with jealousy? I will be obedient. The little girl cheered excitedly. Gu Nan was already walking on the streets of Sanguinary City. This main city belonged to the Blood Clan, and was one of the few bustling areas in the undead nation. No matter how gorgeous Skeleton City was, it still gave off a lifeless feeling. Sanguinary City was different. Scantily clad vampire girls, human girls kept in captivity by the Blood Clan, and necromancers wrapped in black robes could be seen everywhere. The undead nation obviously did not only have the undead. This was called an abandoned main plain because it was a desert of faith, not because it was truly abandoned. Sanguinary City was a gathering place for living beings in this plain. Even the necromancers with strange personalities were not all willing to soak in a pile of corpses. In comparison, powerful and good-looking servants like the Blood Clan were naturally more suitable. Gu Nan thought so too. After all, if they were looking for servants, the Blood Clan was undoubtedly a better choice. Pleasing to the eyes was one aspect, and their high speed and high attack characteristics were more suitable for conquering the Crescent World dungeon. At the same time, the Blood Clan also had fairly good regenerative abilities. Apart from their lack of defense and their fear of light, they were basically a weakened version of the body of an evil god. In Sanguinary City, there was only one clan of vampires with the surname Raymond, which was not quite the same as the legends of Gu Nan's previous life. However, the background story had never been what Gu Nan was interested in. He still clearly remembered how the mission of subduing the vampires would unfold, and that was enough. After a while, Gu Nan had already changed his clothes and was wandering the streets of Sanguinary City. He was wearing a long silver-gray windbreaker and riding a dark red nightmare beast with fiery hooves, like an unruly prodigal son. "Sir Knight, do you want to buy flowers?" A timid voice sounded in Gu Nan's ears. It was a girl in a short skirt with light makeup on her face. Her hands were empty, and she did not look like a flower seller at all, but she looked at Gu Nan expectantly. In Sanguinary City, buying and selling flowers did not refer to real flowers, but the blood of virgins. "What kind of flowers?" Gu Nan muttered inwardly, but said calmly on the surface. Sanguinary City had strict laws. Vampires were not allowed to drink the blood of strangers at will, but there were always vampires looking for excitement. Dressed like this, Gu Nan looked like a down-and-out vampire with a little money who could not afford to buy a high-grade blood thrall, so he could only come here to satisfy his cravings. When the girl heard Gu Nan's answer, her eyes lit up and she said, "Copper flower, beast flower, ravishing flower, they all have them." This was still a folk code word, referring to humans, orcs, and half-elves respectively. "Do you have dead red flowers?" Gu Nan's cold voice sounded, slightly startling the girl. Dead red flowers were unique to the kingdom of the undead, and in this place they specifically referred to vampire girls. Vampires could also drink other vampires, but doing so would not satisfy their bodies. It was purely for the pleasure of drinking. To put it simply, drinking blood was like eating, a physiological need for vampires. Drinking other vampires was like taking drugs. It could bring extra pleasure, but it was a taboo. The flower seller looked at Gu Nan with a strange gaze. A small investor, like her, did not look like she would have something as high-grade as dead red flowers. Why would he ask such a question? But the greed in her heart made her have no time to think too much, because coincidentally, she really did have a dead red flower in her hands. In the dark room, Gu Nan sat alone at the side. In front of him was a messy bed. Knock, knock, knock. A knock that was neither light nor heavy came from the door, showing that the visitor was well educated. But the last two knocks were a little hurried, revealing the nervousness in her heart. Come in. As Gu Nan's voice sounded, a girl in a long black dress walked in. Her white undershirt could be seen under the chiffon material. Sir. The girl in the black dress bowed respectfully, trying to make herself look less nervous. You can call me Shauna, that's your name, isn't it? Gu Nan smiled and said softly. Who are you? Shauna only felt a chill on her back. Her original nervousness exploded, and even her voice was a little shaky. He actually knew her identity. Could it be that the family found out about her actions and sent him to punish her? Don't be nervous. As you can see, I'm a prophet, Gu Nan said with a smile. You seem to be in need of money, so you sneaked out, hoping to raise money by becoming a blood meal? Shauna's eyes were a little cold and vigilant. She said softly, yes. There was indeed a prophet in the world, but Shauna could not believe him at all. Your parents were killed and you want revenge? You want to become the greatest vampire in the world and rule the bloody city? Enough. Shauna interrupted coldly. I don't know where you found out about my identity and past, but don't try to play tricks on me like this. Gu Nan showed a noncommittal expression, but the faint smile on his face did not change. Your brother will make his move soon. Before the blood club opens, I will go find you. Shauna just stared at him fiercely, got up and quickly walked out of the room. Gu Nan also walked out after her. The flower seller girl was guarding the door. The red flower was such a high price, she could not ignore it. So fast? She looked at Gu Nan in confusion. The latter did not seem to have any blood at the corner of his mouth. Pay up when you're done. Don't deny it. After saying this, the figures of a few men walked out from behind her. Each of them had a scimitar on their waist. They were the famous drow swordsmen of the underground world. In this kind of narrow terrain, the drow swordsmen could exert 200% of their combat power. Okay. Gu Nan smiled and nodded. The next moment, a few shadows jumped out from the ground and instantly drowned them, including the flower seller. Chapter 3:11. Start of the title. End of the title. 1 Text Chapter 351 Zhong Dai's Hobbies /H1 A Style equals Color #00F Ref equals Imel. Next chapter /Adablilager border equals 0 table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left TRTD/TR/table. Shauna, the vampire girl. This was a famous chain quest in his past life. As long as it was completed well, players would have the chance to take complete control of the Raymond clan, and even the entire bloody city. In the game, almost every large territory would have some sort of clue in the form of a chain quest, which would pique the player's interest and slowly conquer it. If not for this sort of storyline clue, the players would probably choose to massacre the entire city. Now, this design, which was originally meant to increase the player's interest, just happened to be convenient for Gu Nan. Shauna's clue was the easiest to control the vampire clan out of all the clues in the bloody city, but it wasn't easy to interfere with the entire bloody city. However, Gu Nan's goal was to take control of the Raymond clan, so he had no interest in the bloody city. As long as he helped Shauna get through the ordeal and let her go out to train, then in a short 2 months, she would reach the heavens in a single bound and become a legendary powerhouse. When that time came, Shauna would return as the king, but she would still need the players' help to truly unify the Raymond clan. After all, a legendary powerhouse could not be considered invincible. Just within the vampire clan alone, there were more than 10 legendary princes holding down the fort. After sending Shauna off, I can go get that thing. Gu Nan walked on the streets of the bloody city, calculating the journey in his mind. Returning to the Pantheon world made Gu Nan feel like everything was under his control, because all the people and things here were listed in his mind. Wait a minute. When Gu Nan walked in front of a building, he suddenly realized that something was wrong and stopped in his tracks. In front of him was an antique pavilion. It was made entirely of redwood and was filled with the classical beauty of the East. On the signboard were the words, "Clear River Pavilion." Gu Nan was not an immortal. He could no longer remember what the original building was, but he was certain that it was not some Clear River Pavilion. In other words, there shouldn't be such a thing in the game. This kind of architecture was clearly the style of the heavenly world. Brother Gu Nan. Gu Nan raised his head and saw Zhong Dai standing outside the Qinghe Pavilion with Dooku beside her. Gu Nan looked up and saw Zhong Dai standing outside the Qinghe Pavilion. Zhong Dai was following Lu Xian? Zheng? The officials of the 4 branches of Confucianism are barking? School? The dishes are stunned by the freshness of the reading? The 4 series of the Spear of the Monkey King back to the Broken Skeleton Australia Stealthy Footprints Chun Song Song Wang Jingjun. I'm here to see the Blood Club, Zhong Dai said excitedly. Seeing Gu Nan's gaze fall behind her, she said, "You mean this? This is owned by my family." As soon as Zhong Dai finished speaking, Gu Nan suddenly understood. Clear River Realm, Zhong Qinghe, Clear River Pavilion. Zhong Qinghe, the first master of the Clear River Realm, had always liked to use his name to name his businesses, even the astral realm. This meant that the Clear River Pavilion was this master of the stars business, and his tentacles had actually extended to the world of gods. Gu Nan finally realized how different this world was from the game. The existence of the heavenly world meant that it was different. The 2 worlds were not completely isolated from each other. Skills, knowledge, and even power systems could be interacted with each other. Especially for an astral realm like the Clear River Realm, which was mainly commercial, it was normal for its influence to spread throughout the world of gods. On the other hand, the 2 worlds knew of each other's existence, which would also affect the decisions of their respective experts. The gods in the game fought with each other, but with an outsider like the heavenly world, it was uncertain if they would still fight so fiercely. All in all, the heavenly world was like a giant butterfly. It could completely change the world of gods beyond recognition, and it would not be the same as what Gu Nan was familiar with. I can't trust the game's history too much, but some knowledge is fine. Gu Nan immediately made a judgment in his heart, and adjusted his train of thought for this trip. If he copied the game's history completely, there was no telling when problems would arise. Zhong Dai was still dragging Gu Nan along with her. Her train of thought was very jumpy. She could talk about disgusting zombie soldiers to delicious blood drinks in an instant. That's right, delicious blood drink. It would be too naive to really treat Zhong Dai as a naive girl. As the master of the Star's daughter, Bai Qiaozhen already had the experience of managing a realm. Even if Zhong Dai had little interest in management, she could not possibly be a flower in a greenhouse. However, she was not hiding herself. She was the type of person who was extremely shrewd. Instead, she was pure enough, pure to the point of extreme. Big brother Gu Nan, let's go to the arena. I really want to see them get beaten to death. Zhong Dai tugged at Gu Nan's sleeve, saying something shocking. Duke broke out in a cold sweat as he listened. Originally Lu Xian? Standing Alliance? Time? What? Punishment? Old Aperture Collapse Loyal Badger Model? Retreat? Xiongtuo Invade? Bear the burden of bad luck? Is it a comparison of the past to the present? But after truly interacting with this young lady, he finally understood how terrifying Zhong Dai was. Do you like blood? Gu Nan could not help but ask as he watched Zhong Dai gulp after gulp down the blood drinker that was unique to Blood City. This blood drink was made from the fresh blood of various creatures, and no one except the blood breeds would like it. Even after being processed, the pungent smell of blood was gone, and the taste was exactly the same as a normal drink. Yes. Zhong Dai seemed inexplicably excited at the mention of this topic. Of course, she had been excited ever since she came to Blood City. I've liked blood since I was very young. But bleeding hurts, so watching others bleed is the best, Zhong Dai said with an innocent smile on her face. When she said these words, she was completely sincere. She agreed with her own words from the bottom of her heart. A blood fetishist who did not want to bleed because of the pain and liked to watch others bleed, Gu Nan had already determined her position in his heart. Apart from her unique hobby of liking blood, Zhong Dai was indeed a young girl who had not experienced much of the world. She did not even have much vigilance against strangers. He had to wait for the blood club to open, and the item could only be taken after Shauna left. Gu Nan was in a state of leisure for the time being, so he did not mind going with Zhong Dai. On the other hand, he also wanted to see what would happen when the guests from the heavenly worlds entered the original game plot. And the arena in Blood City just happened to have a plot that was suitable to trigger. All right. And so Gu Nan nodded. Zhong Dai smiled until her eyes narrowed. She was naive, but that did not mean she knew nothing about power. She was also willing to get close to a very powerful big brother like Gu Nan. Moreover, whether her trip to the world of gods could be successful depended on him. Zhong Dai's gaze shifted to Duke. Duke understood her meaning and hurriedly said, "If you're talking about the arena." Chapter 312. The central arena was the most important arena in name, but it was only one of the 3 major arenas in Sanguinary City. Due to poor management, the central arena was already in a declining state. It was constantly being chased by 2 up-and-coming stars and could be thrown out of the big 3 ranks at any time. But it was also because of this that the central arena began to prepare more and more shameless programs in order to attract more customers. The degree of gore far exceeded that of its peers. Over time, the central gladiator arena really did find a new way of doing things. At this point, not only were the arenas filled with all kinds of blood and violence, but there were also many spectators fighting below the stage. However, the arena officials deliberately stopped this and tacitly approved of this behavior. They even secretly spread rumors that their arena was a men's battlefield. Gu Nan's group had just arrived at the entrance when a burly man fell heavily in front of them. There was a large wound on his abdomen from which blood was gushing out continuously. Interested? Gu Nan's expression didn't change in the slightest as he turned to Zhong Dai and asked. Zhong Dai shook her head with a look of disdain. "I only like beautiful big sisters, preferably virgins." "Oh, then your hobby is indeed a bit similar to the vampires." Gu Nan nodded. Disliking men, and only liking the blood of young virgins, was one of the characteristics of the vampires. Gu Nan stepped over the burly man's body at a moderate pace. A number of people rushed out from the arena's entrance and pointed behind Gu Nan. "There! Chop him to death!" These people each held an axe in their hand. Their faces were ferocious, and there were obvious bloodstains on the axe's blades. Zhong Dai and Duke, who were a step behind, happened to be walking beside the fallen man. Duke's face was pale from fright, but little Zhong Dai was watching with great interest. "Let's go." Gu Nan's calm voice rang out as he gestured for the 2 to continue forward. But Duke glanced at the menacing axemen and was afraid that they would chop him and Zhong Dai down if they continued forward. However, what surprised him was that when the axemen passed by him, they did not even raise their heads, and directly chopped at the big man on the ground. They only stood up abruptly when the burly man was slashed to the point of being badly mutilated and almost turned into minced meat, and they bowed to Gu Nan's group of 3 in unison. "Welcome to the central arena." Duke was stunned, but Gu Nan came back and patted little Zhong Dai's head. "This is a reserved program of the Central Gladiator Arena. It is performed dozens of times a day." "So it's a performance." Duke heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. Although he had been in the Undead Kingdom for more than a decade, it was his first time coming to Bloody City. He usually worked in Skeleton City. But it looks so realistic. Little Zhong Dai looked carefully at the meat paste on the ground and even poked it with a twig. Of course it's realistic. Gunan laughed. Because this person was really hacked to death. The realistic performance at the entrance of the central gladiator arena probably scared the poor duke. He followed behind Zhong Dai with a pale face. Little Zhong Dai, however, did not seem to feel anything. She was indifferent to all violence and blood, and did not feel any sympathy for the loss of life. What are you doing in Bloody City? To join the Blood Club, of course. Oh, you want to be bitten and turned into a vampire? Yes. Zhong Dai smiled until her eyes were squinted. Then I can drink blood justifiably. I heard that drinking blood is very comfortable. Is that true? It's true. Gunan nodded seriously. Little Zhong Dai smiled even more happily. She did not ask how Gunan knew and just looked at the arena below with a smile. There was a werewolf fighting with a human on the arena. The werewolf's head had been cut in half, but he was still fighting with all his might. The human opponent was constantly teasing him, slashing him again and again, leaving scars on his body. While attacking his opponent, the human was still waving his hands at the audience. It should be said that he was doing this mainly for the audience to see. They're too ugly. However, the scene of blood splattering everywhere did not seem to interest Zhong Dai. There are also blood-breed gladiators here. Only you can afford them, Gunan said with a smile. Zhong Dai's eyes immediately lit up. She turned to look at Duke, but the latter had a bitter smile on his face. Outside the gates of Bloody City, a black-robed man slowly appeared and walked to a dark corner. The target is in the central gladiator arena. The black-robed man's voice traveled into the corner and seemed to echo far away. After a long time, a reply came from the dark corner. There is a legend in the gladiator arena. Change of plan. Change to assassination. Yes. The black-robed man was silent for a while, then said, May I ask which legend it is, my lord? An outsider. In the middle of the arena, a man and a woman of the blood tribe were standing in the arena, looking at each other with obvious worry in their eyes. Fight faster. Fight faster. You two damned vampires, hurry up and fight. Blood-sucking monsters, what a waste of time. The two of them stood opposite each other on the arena, but they did not make a move. This already caused the audience below the arena to be very dissatisfied, and they all started shouting. That's right, fight faster. Little Zhong Dai was also shouting loudly. Her face had a fanatical expression, as if she was the most infatuated fan. However, there was probably no celebrity who would like to have a fan like her, a fan who could kill one's life. Little Zhong Dai, who was in the midst of her excitement, did not notice that a man and a woman were walking over quickly. Zhong Dai, is this what you mean by liking the blood breed? Lu Xian? Su Na? Ge? Chu? Si Hu? Ju Sua? Ju Ao Shu? Duke hurriedly stood up and revealed a relieved smile. Miss Lu, you're finally here. His emotions were not fake. During this period of time, he had been tortured by the duo of Gu Nan and Zhong Dai to the point of insanity. It was also because of this that he had secretly contacted Lu Xian, Zheng, M, Chuang, Bei Sua Kuanei Long. Zhong Dai's voice stopped abruptly. She was like a well-behaved girl who had gone out to a bar one day and was suddenly bumped into by her family. She put her hands behind her back guiltily and said, I'd just like to see vampires fight. Big Brother Gunan, save me! As soon as she finished her sentence, she quickly ran behind Gunan, only revealing her small head, and looked at Lu Xian. Swollen limulus beating up Sua Field Lu Xian? Zhongya? And I? Pai Hua? Min Xian Hua? Fu Wen Ben Mu Ming? Mu Gua Argon Bad Sword? Yu Hao Da Di Hui Bei Huan Si Mujing? What romance novels, what wanting to see handsome men and beautiful women of the blood breed, Lord Gunan, please hand Miss Zhong over to us. Lu Xian Chai? Jiafu? Times Cough Mi Yuhan Nan Miao Jiao Tsong Lu Chu. Zhong Dai raised her head nervously and looked at the side of Gunan's face. This was already what she could think of. Break away from Lu Xian? Ji Miao Wen Bai and I? Lai Shu? Gu Nan smiled and patted little Zhong Dai's head. He said, no. There was no reason, no exchange, or compensation. He said he wouldn't give it to her. Lu Xian? Swollen Yi Chiao? Scandium? Kong Nai Si? Huang Ben Zhu Yi Hui? Lang Wan Wei? Ice? On the other hand, the middle-aged man who had accompanied her here but had not spoken all this time revealed a smile. Miss Lu, do you need my help? The middle-aged man smiled and said, I can let your two companions leave the arena temporarily. Why? Who are you? Zhong Dai instantly exploded. She was still waiting to see the battle of the blood breed. The middle-aged man looked at Zhong Dai, and the smile on his face became even wider. I am one of the 3 owners of this arena. My name is Nua. At this point, his expression suddenly froze. This was because a shadowy hand was gripping his neck and slamming him onto the arena. Chapter 313. The title starts with ad. End of ad on Title 1 Chapter 353 Original Blood /H1 A Style equals Color. Hashtag 00F. Ref equals 5675171. HTML. Next chapter /Adablilager border equals 0 table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left trtd/tr/table knight elf Baron Noken was one of the 3 owners of the central arena. He had quite a good reputation in the Bloody City, but in Gu Nan's eyes, he was just a key to activate a mission. The chain mission of the Central Gladiator Arena was not complicated at all. There were 2 forces that wanted to kill Noken at the same time. One of them chose to do it themselves, while the other arranged for 2 vampires to be the assassins. And these 2 vampires were the man and woman standing in the arena now. In fact, these 2 vampires were a pair of lovers, but they weren't born in Blood City, nor were they members of the Raymond clan. That was why they were forced to become gladiators in order to find opportunities to assassinate their target. Originally, in this quest line, the players would receive the clue that there were 2 rare blood breed gladiators that seemed to be related. Then, they would dig out the assassination targets from them. The next step was simple. It was nothing more than sending Noken before the other party completed their mission and letting them kill him. The reward for the mission was a promise from the 2 vampires to help complete a task within their power. This, within his power, was truly within his power, and not just something that the protagonists in novels said. As long as they could do it, they would do it without hesitation. Even if you asked a female vampire to sleep with you, or even if you asked them to kill each other, they would do it immediately. Of course, in the end, the 2 of them would stop because they couldn't bring themselves to do it, and the promise would be voided. The correct way to use this reward was for the 2 vampires to contribute a portion of their origin blood. They came from a special clan, and when their origin blood mixed, they could hasten the growth of a normal vampire into a talented first-generation vampire. It was a benefit for blood breed players. This was exactly what Gu Nan wanted. Since Zhong Dai was willing to accept the embrace and become a vampire, Gu Nan did not mind helping her. Of course, his help was not without purpose. If Zhong Dai could play the role of a player and participate in a series of events, then her chances of becoming the leader of the Raymond family would be higher than Shauna's. Ever since he discovered that the forces of the All-Heavens world could also affect this side, Gu Nan no longer completely trusted his memories. He had to make more preparations. On the other hand, if the players walked the path of the Blood Clan, something interesting would happen in the end. Countless thoughts flashed through Gu Nan's mind, but the situation at the scene was changing. Little Zhong Dai couldn't see the fight between the 2 vampires because the man and woman were still distressed, but when they saw Noah appear in front of them, how could they hold back? The 2 of them lunged at Noken at the same time, their hands turning into a blood-red light as they pierced into Noken's chest with astonishing might. Everything happened too quickly, and Noken's face was still filled with shock, as if he couldn't believe that he would die just like that. Below the stage, a black-robed man let out a low roar of anger as he heavily slammed his palm into the wall of the arena, almost blasting a hole through it. He had received the order to assassinate Noken, but before he could even carry out his new plan, Noken had already died in front of him. His gaze shifted to the stands, staring at Liu Xian. "She's worth it. Clear River Pavilion." The black-robed man muttered this somewhat strange pronunciation, his tone carrying a bit of hatred. If not for the sudden appearance of this legendary expert, they wouldn't have needed to change their plan. With Noken dead, the two vampires no longer hesitated, immediately spreading a pair of bloody wings and flying into the sky. "Follow me," Gu Nan's voice sounded in Zhong Dai's ears. Night fell, and two figures slowly walked through the forest. Their footsteps were somewhat hurried, and could even be said to be messy, but there was an indescribable sense of joy in them. "We're free, Natasha. We're finally free." The man's voice reverberated, startling a few birds under the night sky. "Yes, we're free." Natasha's voice was a bit more tactful, but she still couldn't conceal the excitement in her voice. "After we leave. My apologies, you two." A voice came from the small wooden house in front of them, causing the two to raise their heads in shock. This wooden house was personally built by the two of them when they first came to Bloody City, and they didn't even know the person who threatened them, so how could there be someone hiding here? Gu Nan's figure slowly appeared, followed by the curious Zhong Dai and the silent Liu Xian. "Frame, you might not be free yet." Gu Nan looked at them calmly and said indifferently, "I was the one who delivered Noken to you, and according to your clan's teachings, you have to pay the corresponding price." The vampire clan's teachings were very strict, branded in their bloodline, and the price of violating them was unimaginable. There was once a vampire player who didn't believe it, but then he deleted his account. Natasha's beautiful face was already pale, and the male vampire could only grit his teeth and say, "Don't even think about threatening us, even with the family teachings we only need." "Cut the crap, I want both of your origin blood," Gu Nan interrupted unceremoniously. The two's expressions stiffened, and they couldn't help but look at each other. The price of origin blood wasn't completely unacceptable, even though it was also incomparably precious, but compared to freedom, okay. Natasha nodded first. Moments later, the two figures had already left, and a bottle of pale golden liquid appeared in Gu Nan's hand. "Is this bottle of blood useful?" Zhong Dai stared at the bottle in Gu Nan's hand, and revealed a simple and honest smile. "How about I drink it? I'm so thirsty." There was a mysterious smile on Gu Nan's face, and he said, "If you can successfully accept the embrace, I'll give it to you." "It's a deal," Zhong Dai quickly said. The purpose of her trip was to join the Blood Club and accept the embrace. This was a treasure for free. "Absolutely not." "Zizong dumpling sucking toad? Nio?" Gu Nan slowly turned his head and looked at her with interest, but he didn't seem to have any intention of doing anything. His gaze made Liu Xian. "What's going on? Old Chong Ku value withered skeleton father's embrace? What about withered manganese invasion? Woody a man by Zizi?" Sure, Junshi originally thought that Zhong Dai was just curious, and wanted to see what a blood descendant looked like and also take a look at the Blood Club. Who would have thought that she wanted to turn herself into a blood descendant? "What's wrong with being a blood descendant?" Zhong Dai retorted. "Liu Xian? Biopasin Pa Chong? Wawa? And I Nua bone disintegration Amine Chiao Jianbo? For washes of clay and clay to play with? Kai Chiao Dai?" Chapter 314. AD on the title begins. AD on the title Ench 1 Body Volume Chapter 354 with umbrella /H1 A style equals color. #00F. Ref equals iml. Next chapter /Adablilager border equals 0 table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left. TRTD/TR/table Gu Nan answered crisply. Let Lu Xin? Zhong Buluan fish squat. Only then did she remember that there had always been rumors in the world that this person in front of her was the reincarnation of a heavenly demon. Could it be true? But she quickly shook her head. Now wasn't the time to be concerned about Gu Nan's background. She had to persuade Zhong Dai to change her mind. Vampires were a despicable race. Outside the wooden hut, Gu Nan just watched the two women argue all the way. He didn't come out to mediate or persuade them to fight. He wanted to see if Zhong Dai's willpower was firm, and if she had enough willpower to complete his plan and scout the way for him. This arrangement on Zhong Dai had nothing to do with the mission itself. It was a backup plan he had prepared for the mission, and at the same time, an experiment. He wanted to try and make an NPC that originally didn't exist in the game play the role of a player. To achieve this, the NPC's worldview couldn't be too close to the mundane world. A real player definitely couldn't be found. It was already pretty good to have someone as simple and stubborn as Zhong Dai. Inside the Blood Club, a man with pale skin that seemed slightly sickly said with a smile, "You can rest assured, Miss Lu." Pausing for a moment, the man took a sip of the red liquid in the cup. "Since you've already found us, the person you speak of will definitely not pass the test. Then I'll leave it to you, Mr. Stanton. Lu Xin? Frozen bream? Flickering silk flattery? Collapse? Father's evil son's arrogant moat plotting convergence? A gap in exchange for a rising seductress? Copy. Lu Xin? Sincere remonstrance billowed Neon rushing forth? The common emperor choked seeing Rapier is praying Amine strangling Jian. However, from the results of her inquiries, this Stanton in front of her had a pretty good reputation. Although they were greedy, they wouldn't refuse to work for money. For the Clear River Pavilion, anything that could be settled with money was not a big deal. The two of them chatted happily, but it was not the opening day of the Blood Club yet. Lu Xin? Loyal to the ruler, exuberant and sentimental. She left very quickly, and Duke was already waiting for her at the door. Miss Lu, with Stanton manipulating things from the inside, we can rest assured. Stanton was one of the preliminary examiners for this assessment. It was not easy to guarantee that someone would be selected, but it was not difficult to eliminate someone. It's not enough. Hastily returned to the fleet? Harrow? It was swollen and painful. In the blink of an eye, nearly half a month had passed. This was the opening day of the Blood Club, the day the Raymond clan openly recruited new descendants. Today was also a special day for the Redmond clansmen who had become vampires. A portion of them would have their Redmond surname erased. For a clan, the number of clansmen with surnames was always fixed. Every year, the number of people who joined would be kicked out. Of course, these newly recruited clansmen also had the risk of having their surnames erased, and vampires who lost their surnames were even more miserable. They would never be able to recover their identity. Vampires who had their surnames stripped were equivalent to losing their political power. They could no longer hold any position in the clan, nor could they obtain any resources. Shauna sat in front of the round table. Her long golden hair was a bit messy, and her expression was haggard. She seemed to be greatly troubled. Naturally, she was very troubled, because she was on the list of those whose surnames would be erased today. Because she had been discovered to have gone out without permission and wanted to become a blood thrall to earn money, she was considered to have tarnished the clan's glory and was unworthy of being a vampire descendant. What should I do? These 4 words echoed in Shauna's mind. Actually, she still had one last method, but she was unwilling to think about it, leaving Blood City and becoming a vagrant vampire. Losing the dignity and status of a noble and becoming a vagrant, this was normally unimaginable, but now there was a sliver of possibility. Compared to losing even her surname, becoming a vagrant at least had some leeway. But first, you must be able to escape. Gu Nan's voice rang directly beside Shauna's ear, as if he had completely seen through her thoughts. His words were sharp and piercing. It's you. Shauna suddenly stood up and quickly rushed in front of Gunan. She would never forget this face. If it weren't for him, she wouldn't have been discovered by the clan and wouldn't have ended up like this. Do you still not understand? Gunan smiled and said, Your dear brother has been watching you for a long time. As long as you receive a customer, no matter what the result is, I will definitely stand here. Shauna's quest line was triggered by buying flowers. If the players didn't try, she wouldn't be bought. The reason was very simple. Other than bored players, no one would ask a flower girl on the street if she had something as advanced as a dead red flower. This was as unreliable as someone asking you, Big bro, do you want to play? And you replying, How much is Sister Chillying? Shauna's delicate face was deathly pale. After a long silence, she finally opened her mouth and said, How can you help me? What do I need to pay? Her thoughts were very clear. There might be people in this world who would help her for free, but the one in front of her was obviously not one of them. I can give you power. Gunan's face was still calm. As the price, your life will belong to me. Shauna's green eyes flashed with a hint of helplessness, but in the end she still nodded. A moment later, an extremely obscure shadow law appeared. A small black sword entered Shauna's chest and circled around her heart. Go, don't let me down. Gunan revealed a strange smile. The Blood Club in Blood City was finally opened. On this day, vampire men and women slowly walked out. The men were handsome, the women were beautiful. Just from their looks, vampires were indeed one of the races blessed by the heavens. Ladies and gentlemen, a male vampire stood on a high platform and said to the people below, In this year's Blood Club, there will be 10 lucky ones who have the honor of joining the noble Raymond clan. Oh, sorry. He paused and said again, I just received news that a despicable clansman chose to defect. Before we kill her and take back our family name, there will only be 9 lucky ones this time. There are only 9 of them. Zhongdai stood beside Gunan and looked around at the surroundings. Beside her, there were hundreds of people in line, most of them were her competitors. Sister Lu will definitely think of a way to stop me, right? She looked at the platform again. Of course. Gunan casually replied, but it doesn't matter, she can only use money. Sometimes, money isn't everything. Right, I told you to bring an umbrella, did you bring it? Yes. Zhongdai nodded her head honestly. There are a few lucky fellows. Gunan glanced at the crowd and saw a few candidates with umbrellas. He waved his hand, and black rain started to fall from the sky. The vampires on the platform were still chatting, while Stanton sat inside the club and looked at the name list in his hands. Zhongdai, a name with such a strange pronunciation, was easily found by him without much effort. A smile appeared on Stanton's face, and he lightly drew a line behind Zhongdai's name, then passed the name list to his partner beside him. This person, please don't let her be selected. It's a small matter. Bernoulli, who was also an examiner, didn't even raise his head. After glancing at the name, he casually replied. They did things like this countless times every year, so of course they wouldn't reject their partner's request. Stanton smiled slightly and didn't say anything else. There were too many aspects involved in the assessment of the descendants of vampires, so the examiner's subjective factors had a huge impact, giving the examiners a chance to make a move. Examiners like Stanton and the others were fine, but the final selection was the real lucrative job. The nonsense outside should be over by now, right? Why hasn't anyone come in yet? Stanton raised his head in dissatisfaction and raised his voice. Very quickly, a servant ran over in a hurry, sweating profusely. Sirs, it's raining outside. Raining. Bernoulli raised his head in confusion. What does the rain have to do with our assessment? It's the rain of corrosion. I don't know why, but it shouldn't rain at this time of year, the servant stuttered. As long as it was a living person, all of them turned into white bones. Of our examinees, only 4 survived. Stanton's mind went blank and he asked subconsciously, How did these four survive? Chapter 3:15. Start of ad on the title. End of ad on the title. 1 Chapter 3:55 Blood food /H1 A style equals color. Hashtag 00F. Ref equals 5677129. HTML. Next chapter /Adobe border equals 0 foot table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left trtd/tr/table. The sky above the Blood City suddenly started to rain corrosive rain. This was out of everyone's expectations. The corrosive rain was a special natural phenomenon. Its effect was completely targeted at living creatures. Living creatures without fresh flesh and blood, or dead objects such as walls and trees, would not be affected. When living creatures came into contact with this rain, their souls would rot along with their flesh and blood. However, undead creatures like the skeleton soldiers were not afraid at all. Unfortunately, the people who came to the Blood Club today to receive the embrace were definitely not undead creatures. In the kingdom of the undead, the corrosive rain was not a strange thing. Many flying undead creatures could cause this phenomenon. If one was unlucky, a skeleton dragon flying above and sneezing could also cause a corrosive rain. Of course, even ordinary people would be able to resist such a degree of corrosion. The body's ability to regulate itself was enough to resist the corrosion. However, today's corrosive rain was so strong that even a rank 3 being would be annihilated with just a touch. This was clearly the full power of a legend rank powerhouse. Bring the remaining 4 in, Bernoulli said coldly as he looked at the mess outside the Blood Club with a gloomy face. The 4 lucky ones, including Zhong Dai, were quickly brought into the Blood Club. At this moment, a male and a female examiner appeared beside Stanton and Bernoulli. They were the 2 people who had been selected, and their faces were also ashen. With such a sudden scene, there was no need for them to select anymore. There were less than 9 people left, so of course they would all advance automatically. All 4 of you have been selected. Follow me. Bernoulli sighed and spoke first. Stanton's gaze fell on Zhong Dai. He obviously recognized her face, but in the end, he did not say anything and allowed Bernoulli to take her away. I don't want the money anymore. I'll treat it as if I've never seen you. Hurry up and scram. Stanton glared at Lu Xian angrily. Zheng? File feed Lu Xian? Throw the ball? Burial bones Ba Gu Luoren? Is the consort's salary jealousy, bitterness? Shrug? How dare you try to bluff? Chi? Make an appointment with the King of Hell? Take? Rangoon. What she said was not without reason. Compared to the quota of 9 people, whether it was 3 or 4, there was no difference. As long as Stanton had persisted, Zhong Dai might still have been kicked out of the selection. But the question was, why did Stanton do this? Are you crazy? That rain of corrosion was at least done by a legendary expert. That was at the legendary level. Stanton's voice grew louder. His calculations were very clear. That rain was obviously caused by an expert. If he had said that he would kick Zhong Dai out first, it would still be acceptable. But if he said it in front of Zhong Dai, wouldn't that be equivalent to exposing himself? Once Zhong Dai bore a grudge against him and provoked the legendary expert behind her to take action, the clan would not be able to protect him. Of course, Stanton would never have thought that the person standing in front of him right now was Lu Xian. Zheng? Pry? Make fun? Liao? And Lu Xian? Ji Qian Huan stupid Sigma bad may scheming to play? Is it a model of the Ba class, the Ba class, the Ba class, the Ba class? Yu Huang Qin flounder? If she had known earlier, she would not have concealed her strength. In reality, she had not deliberately concealed her strength. It was just that the clear river boundary had established itself in the heavens through commerce. Lu Xian? Are you dragging me along with you? Ji? Jiogu Luoren? Yuru Gushu? In the principles that the people of the Clear River boundary believed in, strength was only the foundation for self-protection. Achieving a win-win situation through commerce was a qualified transaction. But it was too late to say all this now. Zhong Dai had already been lured into the Blood Club, and her name had already been registered in the Raymond clan. There was no way to snatch her back. Actually, Lu Xian? The coffin was hurriedly torn apart. Fade? Lugu Luoren? However, that backup plan was also prepared for the final stage. Who would have thought that Gu Nan would directly take drastic measures and let Lu Xian win? Burn? Chanting in a hurry? Lu Xian? Jiyu? Sprain? Lai Sun? Done? Does the curtain admit to provoking the dark yet stubbornly and passionately hanging on? Yaji? She would never allow Zhong Dai to make her own decisions and become a vampire. She could not accept the fact that vampires were a race that belonged only to the world of gods, let alone the fact that vampires belonged to the ranks of monsters in her heart. This was the daughter of the Clear River Boundary's Star Lord. She could not even marry here, let alone become a monster that belonged to this place. Miss Lu. Duke stood beside Lu Xian? Childish? Shed? Collapse? Uprooting Yi Chaoren? Alpha Quang Luoren? Ho 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 ash? Lu Xian? Order blow wound? Lie festering skeleton Aoren? Play? Yi Chaoren? Tomb made Ju sheath cut? Duke's expression darkened. Lu Xian? Roast tomb made? By Huang? The scabbard cuts and invades the maids in the grave. The people of the Clear River boundary could walk openly, they could be sinister and unkind, but they could not take the initiative to use force. Zhong Qinghe's law was business, so he believed that everything in the world could be solved with money. If there was a problem that money could not solve, then it must be because money was not spent wisely enough. It will take at least 2 months from being chosen to receiving the embrace. We still have a chance. Ji Yun engraving Ba Ing that Zhu Kai Dang? She had already cast aside the matter of Skeleton City and her purpose in coming to the world of God. She only wanted to save Zhong Dai. Since there's no way to stop her from joining the Raymond clan. Lu Xian? Zhong He's newly frozen flounder? Lu? Ao Chiao Yi Chang's bucket teeth Zhuren? Big brother Gu Nan, I did it. Zhong Dai ran around the room excitedly, tugging at Gu Nan's sleeves for a while and gulping down a large mouthful of blood. Ever since she came to the sanguinary city, her bloodlust had become more and more serious. Almost all she drank every day was blood. 2 months of blood feeding shouldn't be a problem for you. Senior, please choose Christina. Gu Nan looked at Zhong Dai expressionlessly. Becoming a noble member of the Blood Clan was not something that could be achieved by just finding a random vampire to bite. Although in ancient times, the vampires did casually develop their descendants this way, the Raymond clan's status had to be more particular. The particular thing was that after becoming a Blood Clan candidate like Zhong Dai, she would need to feed on blood for at least 2 months before receiving the embrace. The so-called blood feeding referred to consuming all of her food daily in the form of blood. At first, nutrients would be added to the blood, then slowly replaced with pure blood. Only when the candidate's body had completely adapted to the blood feeding would they receive the embrace. Chapter 316. Start of add-on title. End of add-on title 1 body volume chapter 356 knock on the door style equals color. Hashtag 00F. Ref equals iml. Next chapter / attablilager border equals 0 table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left. TRTD/TR/table feeding on blood was not only a ritual, but it also had its practical value. Letting the descendant adapt to the life of feeding on blood in advance would not only help with the success of the embrace, but would also allow the descendant to adapt to the new body and habits faster. Adjusting the body first was much more reliable than relying on genes to change the habit. But on the other hand, feeding on blood at the human stage without the primitive desire from the bloodline was a kind of torture for many people. Zhong Dai had no problem with this. She wanted to become a vampire because of this. The other thing was the choice of the senior. The senior was the vampire responsible for the embrace. Usually, the relationship between the senior and the descendant would be very close, just like parents and children in the clan. Christina. Who's that? Zhong Dai obviously heard what Gunan said. This name sounded a bit tongue-twister, and it made her a bit confused. She's the strongest below the prince rank, and she's not very famous. She'll reach the legendary rank in half a year at most, Gunan said casually. The Blood City and the vampires of the Raymond clan were a rather unique scenery in the Undead Kingdom. Gunan knew a lot about them in his previous life. Christina was a rather low-key vampire in the clan. She lived in seclusion and almost never participated in any noble activity. She devoted herself to combat and cultivation. If players did not trigger Shauna, she was the most suitable pawn to control the Blood City on the surface. I understand. Zhong Dai nodded heavily. Shauna had been successfully sent away, and Zhong Dai had also been properly settled. Gunan finally had time to take that item. The remains of a god were sealed in the holy tomb of the undead, but only special tools could awaken him. There was more than one such item, but considering the difficulty of obtaining it, Gunan's target was easy to lock onto, Kane's left hand. It's not easy to take this hand out. I have to feed it with blood. Gunan recalled how to obtain Kane's left hand. Kane's left hand? Swollen? Don't think of plotting against the Osprey? School? To be jealous of others, yes, Kane is the ancestor of the blood kindred. According to the ancient legends, all the blood kindred are his descendants. Duke was obviously more familiar with the kingdom of the dead. Luxian? Reproductive chat? Waving the sword? Breed guy Kong Song Mi Pin Shovel Shaved Cow? Hui. To know the tailoring of armor. She had already made up her mind to buy the entire Raymond clan and drive Zhong Dai out. Luxian? Chok Mei Mu Jiao Xiang Ma Fei? Beautiful dress? Snatch Shuasha's tomb? Chaotic eunuchs are like birds of a feather. Ash? Is the string swaying in the wind, drinking and playing? Radon Scorpion Badger Threshold Killing Cylinder Money represented external resources. As long as this resource was used well, it could fully influence the internal politics of the group. She had been trying to contact the candidates, but she didn't expect things to change at this critical juncture. The original election process was cancelled. Whoever found Kane's left hand would be the next leader. Where did they get the information? Why are they so sure? Luxian asked. Suffocating argon brilliance? Zhuosha offered the Chunmei Grey Monster? Swallowing Mountain? Chonggong, did no one doubt the authenticity of the news? I heard that the clues to the primogenitor have always been in Redmond and were only unraveled a few days ago, Duke replied unnaturally. Luxian? Zhong Naoxia Flounder Phoenix Can Huan Mei Naoxia School Skeleton Fence Pry? Mo June, yes, eldest Mississippi. In recent days, the entire Raymond clan has been in a state of excitement. This year, the Blood Club had only brought in 4 descendants. This was a very troublesome thing. It meant that they had to find other ways to develop their descendants. But who would have thought that among these 4 descendants, one of them would actually bring them such a huge surprise? The mark that represented the primogenitor's inheritance was accidentally opened by a little guy who was not even a descendant. We must find the primogenitor's weapon. Whoever finds it will be the next leader. This was the consensus reached within the Raymond clan. Of course, the vampires would not call their ancestor by name, and Kane's left hand has always been considered a staff among the vampires. But on the second day, the vampires' mood was not very good. The Blood Club, the Round Table Conference was in progress. Who the hell is it? The current leader, Ms. Mara, slammed the table and said with a frosty face. Around the round table, there were 6 other powerful vampires. These 7 people were the real top leaders of the Raymond clan. Each of them was a legendary level powerhouse. After the mark was opened, the 7 of us checked it together. Even that little guy named Zhong Dai didn't see the content. Who else can it be? Ms. Mara's angry roar echoed in the small room. There was no way she wouldn't be angry. The primogenitor's weapon was supposed to be a top secret, but on the second day, everyone knew about it. Right now, the entire Blood City was talking about the appearance of a vampire's divine weapon. Whoever could obtain this divine weapon would quickly become a legend and even have the hope of igniting the divine fire. Only Mara and the others knew that the primogenitor's weapon could only be called a divine weapon in the hands of vampires. Outsiders couldn't use it. Calm down, Miss Mara. A handsome middle-aged man said. You know we have no reason to do this. Leaking the information about the primogenitor's weapon would not benefit anyone here. The primogenitor's weapon would bring benefits to the entire Raymond clan. This was also the reason why it was linked to the leader's position. Mara coldly glared at him, still angry. It better be like this. This lady clearly didn't trust her own people enough. Okay, everyone. The middle-aged man spoke again. Now is not the time to pursue responsibility. We must get the primogenitor's weapon before anyone else. Outside the Clear River Pavilion, Duke was giving orders to a few subordinates when a familiar figure appeared at the door. Duke looked at Gu Nan in shock and blurted out, You dare to appear here? Gu Nan looked at him strangely and then looked at himself. Why wouldn't I dare? His tone was too awkward. He was clearly the one who had abducted the young miss of the Clear River realm, but he had an expression that said, What grudge do we have against each other? Dooku was in a dilemma. He did not know how strong the person in front of him was, but if he was able to casually throw Nukin away, he would not be weak. He was most likely a break-world elite. However, Dooku was not afraid of the other party. He had the entire Clear River boundary behind him. If it wasn't for the damn rules, a mysterious look flashed in Duke's eyes. If the other party attacked first, there was no rule in the Clear River domain that one could not fight back. Duke asked cautiously, What are you doing here? Lu Xian? Nephew is willing? The clock has begun to rise and fall. Wild? Fan Mujing? First creation? Copy. Tired 4-prawn amaranth Dooku was shocked. He did not understand Gu Nan's attitude. Did this person know he had offended the Clear River realm and wanted to make up for it? But Dooku did not want to let him go. He was thinking of a way to anger Gu Nan. Anger him so that he could not help but attack. Thinking of this, Dooku laughed coldly and said, Do you think you can see Miss Lu just because you want to? If you want to see Miss Lu, go knock on the door yourself. Because of Lu Xian? Swollen and hard to deal with? Lick the brain? Ulcerative carbuncle rash, lick the carbuncle? Lick the carbuncle? When they heard Dooku's words, they cooperated and grinned. However, as soon as Dooku finished speaking, Gu Nan nodded. Then, he grabbed Dooku with one hand and tossed him toward the Clear River Pavilion behind him. Under the terrifying force, Duke turned into a black streak and slammed into the door of the pavilion heavily. He actually directly collapsed the first floor of the Clear River Pavilion. A white light shot into the sky. Lu Xian? Chiba the 8-cloth Shu Jiejing? Mi Jiao the 4th building Chiba? Festering bones Chiba the 4th washing Jianjian? Zhuang Yi the Yong Miao? Tall and handsome? Chapter 317. The title starts with ad. End of ad on Titla 1 text chapter 357 Big Web /H1 A style equals color. #00F. Ref equals iml. Next chapter /Adablilager border equals 0 table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left trtd/tr/table. With such a great disturbance outside the Clear River Pavilion, it immediately attracted the attention of many people. Gu Nan could even sense that several auras were immediately projected over, as if they were about to launch an attack at any time. But of course, Gu Nan would not take it to heart. What a joke! Now that his real body had descended, if Zhong Qinghe came in person, he might give him face and be on his guard. But these stage 4 kids were not worthy of his attention. Lu Xian had also sensed the commotion behind them. Hurling a handkerchief to make a ruckus in the street, collecting taxes to make fun of Zheng? Famine? Ashes? Frame she knew very well how terrifying Gu Nan was. This person had always been unscrupulous in his actions, and now that they were in the world of gods, it would be too late for them to contact Zhong Qinghe for help. Lu Xian? Ji Kong Yun Tang Su Block Broken Bones Press Jian Song? Asked Lu. Junjun Gu Nan had no choice but to repeat his purpose of coming here. Actually, he didn't lie from the beginning. Worth hot shun? Blow-proof, however, since they were hostile, leading the way could also become pointing the way. A moment later, Dooku, who was badly battered and had several broken ribs, said with a bitter face, "Miss Lu, that Gu Nan don't think about revenge. He's not someone we can afford to offend," Lu Xian said. Young crotch? Bluff? A wren on the road is in trouble? Guanhe Xuandi Nilong Lu Xian was one of the representatives of the Clear River realm. Extortion by the Emperor? Zai? Wood? Peach polyester baked slug pod? Chui Zai? Petty and evil Lu Xian? Vinegar o lie down to set around Huan City oyster hard to eat? Making a ruckus by removing the gatha and insignia? CC post rank cute private? Chlorine. At the end of the day, she did not have any personal relationship with Duke. Whether he wanted to suffer or go to Gu Nan to die, it had nothing to do with her. Lu Xian? What about Feng Zhongming? Oyster model? Why do you sneak out of the window and hug me? Wait for the quilt to be compassionate? What is the origin of the barren land? Nanchi? Invade Liaoxi? Astonished lawsuit provokes the people. Zhong Dai had already entered the Blood Club, so it was impossible for the people of Clear River Pavilion to rush in and snatch her away. The best thing to do now was to support a vampire to become the patriarch of the Raymond clan, and then kick Zhong Dai out. It's a pity that the vampire named Mara is stubborn. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Lu Xian? Swollen gray dock blowing clouds? Handcuffs? Turn? Meandering? Roam? Jealous of a stag? Muming Jiao? Huan Feng Bear Die bystander impeachment? In the world of gods, almost all of the slightly larger forces had the protection of the gods. Otherwise, they would not be able to survive. The undead kingdom was an abandoned main plane. This place could not provide the gods with the power of faith, but this did not mean that the forces here did not have a backer. According to the game's background, the one standing behind the Raymond clan should be the god of steel. His divine domain had nothing to do with the blood kindred. In fact, there was even some conflict between them. But this situation was very normal in the undead kingdom. So, even if it was Lu Xian? Jizhua? Ing? Peptide hat dust? Fearful of a foolish offer? Fu Di Kai close evil descending copying? Lu Xian? Hang Zhongsu? Jiao School? Dizzy? Song Yong love record coming together? Hook using panic gouge to blind? Pei hanging large wood to buy the news had already spread throughout the city. The ancestral imprint in the Blood Club was, accidentally, undone by Zhong Dai. And almost at the same time, the information about Cain's left hand in the imprint became known to everyone. Who was the one who did all of this? Lu Xian? Zhizhua Jiameng? Feed. But what confused her even more was that Gu Nan actually personally came to the Clear River Pavilion today and gave her a detailed explanation of the imprint's information. After all, what was revealed within the mark was a proverb that was several hundred lines long. It contained a large amount of useless information as well as misleading words. Everyone knew that there was important information about the god artifact in there, but finding the correct answer would definitely take an astronomical amount of time and effort. Many people had even abandoned proverbs and focused on the blood club. As long as they made any strange movements, there would immediately be a large group of people following behind. Everyone believed that the Raymond clan, as vampires, would be able to solve the riddle even faster. But Lu Xin, big and poor? Retreat and seize the opportunity to act foolishly? To support one's mother, to pay one's salary, to soak one's karma, to enjoy happiness, no matter what, let's test it first. Also, Lu Xin? Jiyun Ji. The Black Poppy Boat Lie Valley hand over mail side 3? Slow down? Elegant? Doctor? Before the paper was completely burned, she could still vaguely see the handwriting on it. Lightless night, 4 seasons mountain belly, 3 blood clan hearts. At the same time, a gray mark disappeared in front of her and fled into the endless void. After a long time, an inexplicable reply fell into her hands. There was only one simple word and a signature on it. Received, Sylvia. Lu Xin? Jihui? Lianai Lien? Yi? Mei Jie Kunai? Bao? Bad Old Love Group Male Side? Stir death and seize the opportunity to act foolishly. No one knew who the news came from. At midnight, when the moonlight was at its heaviest, an extremely low-quality sheepskin scroll was placed on Ms. Mara's desk. At that time, it was the time when the vampires were at their strongest and most perceptive, but the other party chose to put something at that time. The strength of the other party may be far beyond our imagination. The round table meeting that had just been held appeared again, and Ms. Mara's expression became more and more serious. The crumpled parchment was placed in the middle of the round table, surrounded by 7 legendary powerhouses, but none of them reached out to take it. They didn't need to take it at all. The information on it was already clear to them, because there were only a few lines of words. Lightless night, 4 seasons mountain belly. Clear River Pavilion. The time and place match. This person's analysis of the proverb is already at the same progress as ours. Ms. Mara saw that no one spoke, so she took the initiative to say. Just as everyone expected, the Raymond clan had a considerable advantage when it came to analyzing proverbs. While others were still scratching their heads, they had already solved 2 of the 3 important pieces of information: the time and place. The only thing they still had no clue about was how to awaken their ancestor's weapon. It wasn't that they didn't have any information, but that their ancestor had given them too much information, and they had analyzed hundreds of possibilities. But now was the time when the whole city was in chaos, so they didn't have time to slowly try. The group of vampire princes felt as if a big net was slowly covering them, blocking every path they could take, and then they could only take the remaining path. And this path was this piece of parchment that was placed here. Even if it's a trap, we can only jump in. It seems that the problem lies in this Clear River Pavilion. The middle-aged man named Harrison said with a blank expression, "Clear River Pavilion? Does this mean that this Chamber of Commerce has the last clue, or something that we need to awaken?" Chapter 3:18. AD on the title begins. AD on the title Ench 1 Body Volume Chapter 358 The Shadow Goddess and the Order of Celestialsa Style equals color. Hashtag 00F. Ref equals Imel. Next chapter /Adablilager border equals 0 table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left. TRTD/TR/table Gu Nan sat in a dark room, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the table. There was no light in the room, not even the moonlight could shine in. Everything seemed to be shrouded in shadows, the deepest darkness in the world. Of course, this was not Gu Nan releasing his power and pretending to be profound. He was not that bored. In reality, this shadow did not come from him at all. "You don't seem to be afraid of me." A light and somewhat mischievous female voice rang faintly in Gu Nan's ears, as if it was transmitted directly into his heart. Accompanying her voice, the shadows around him grew thicker and thicker, almost drowning Gu Nan entirely. It was only when Gu Nan's entire body was about to be wrapped up that he suddenly stood up and took a step into the shadows in front of him, his right hand reaching out to grab something in front of him. "It's not a good habit to come out and stroll, Sylvia." Gu Nan's voice wandered in the shadows, reaching every corner of the shadows, but not a single bit of it surged out. This change had come too suddenly, so much so that the Sylvia that Gu Nan had spoken of was caught unprepared, and was caught directly by Gu Nan. The surrounding shadows quickly faded, and Gu Nan's figure reappeared. In his right hand there was a young girl in a black dress being lifted like a little chick. Gu Nan looked at her calmly. He had not expected that his plan to take away Kane's left hand would accidentally lure out this. Not exactly a big fish. The shadow goddess, Sylvia. That's right, the one in front of him was the goddess of shadows who shared the same power as Gu Nan. Her divine domain was none other than the goddess of shadows who controlled shadows. Sylvia's personal strength was not strong, and she might not even have reached level 7. Her divine power was definitely worthy of the word weak. But at the same time, she was also a big fish because she had a good brother, the undisputed strongest person in the entire divine world, the Lord of Light and Justice. The brother and sister were both gods, and the saying that light and shadow came from the same source was also started by them. Your power. When Gu Nan made his move, Sylvia could not help but sense the power of his laws, so she was pleasantly surprised. Sylvia didn't panic after being captured by Gu Nan. With her divine occupation of shadow, she wouldn't be killed that easily. In the tens of thousands of years, this was the first time she had encountered a god who also controlled the shadows. Only a god had the ability to capture her. Someone from the light god system dares to come to the undead nation? You are very bold. Gu Nan smiled noncommittally and tossed her aside. He did not care whether Sylvia would escape or not. A mere level 6 god was only worth a few hundred sin points at most, and Gu Nan was not interested in her. Moreover, offending the Lord of Light and Justice was not worth it. What Gu Nan was really concerned about was why Sylvia was here. According to his memory, this goddess of shadows shouldn't have any connection with the undead nation. Although it was an abandoned main plane, the natural characteristics of the undead made it more suitable for the development of the dark god system. I was only asked by someone. Sylvia did not seem afraid at all. She even used the shadows to conjure a chair and sat on it calmly. After a pause, she giggled and said, "Someone asked me to watch over you." Who? Gu Nan already had a guess in his heart, but he was not happy to see it. Hence, his tone became harsh. Sylvia obviously did not like this questioning method. She pursed her lips and looked up deliberately, pretending not to hear what Gu Nan said. The next moment, a shadow dagger had already pierced into her abdomen, and a large hand pressed down on her neck, pressing her to the ground. You better understand your situation. Gu Nan's cold voice sounded, and he stared at her coldly. Others might be afraid of Austin, but I am not. Austin was the original name of the Lord of Light and Justice, but because he was too lofty, there were not many gods who knew his name. Because of this, when Gu Nan said this name with a cold expression, it was imaginable how shocked Sylvia was. The pain in her abdomen was still spreading, and the shadow power that should have been of the same origin kept surging out, invading her body and destroying it wantonly. It almost drove away her own divine power. The shadow that filled the sky appeared once again, but this time it was from Gu Nan, and its aura was completely different from before. If Sylvia's shadow was said to be mysterious and silent, with a hint of the coldness of the night, then Gu Nan's shadow could only be described as unbridled. This shadow ignored all rules and devoured everything around it, like a tyrant that killed wantonly. Sylvia could not imagine that the power of shadow could be so domineering. It was just like the light that suppressed everything in her memory. Light and shadow are of the same origin. So that's what it means. For some reason, this thought appeared in Sylvia's mind. However, she still heard Gunan's words, so she quickly said, I'll say it. I'll say it. Gunan's body did not move at all, and the surrounding shadows showed no signs of stopping. Sylvia was so frightened that she quickly said what she knew. The reason why she came here and was entrusted to look after Gunan was because of Lu Xian? Was it worth that? Screw, of course. The Qinghe realm's business had not only spread to the Pantheon realm through illegal immigration. Zhong Qinghe himself had been here before. Not only had he been here before, but he had also joined a special organization. Sylvia was also a member of this organization, which was why she had received the request for help. According to Sylvia, the members of this organization were all gods or astral lords from the Pantheon realm. Many of them were acquaintances of Gunan. The goddess of twilight, the god of fresh blood, the god of flowers. There was even a name that surprised Gunan, Zhuozhuo. These gods had more or less set foot in the Pantheon realm. Gunan finally understood why Zhuozhuo knew about the hierarchy. The Celestial Society? Gunan muttered the name of this organization, confirming that he had never heard of it before in his memory. In other words, this was an organization that did not exist in the game, even if Gunan had killed many of its members in his previous life. The idea that Gunan had once considered but did not delve too deeply into had finally become a reality. The gods and astral lords had long been in close contact with each other. With no conflict of interest, they had even formed an organization that spanned across the two worlds. After all, reality was not a novel. Two interconnected worlds did not necessarily have to go to war. The gods and astral lords all had their own interests, and were not waiting for Gunan to conquer them. Interesting. A smile appeared on Gunan's face. He dragged Sylvia up and said, I want to join the Celestial Society. The wound on Sylvia's abdomen had not healed yet. She hugged her stomach and replied angrily, You think you can join just because you want to? Chapter 319. AD on the title began. AD on the title in Dead One Body Scroll Chapter 359 The Gods and the Star Lord Style equals color. Hashtag 00F. Ref equals Immel. Next chapter / Adablilager border equals 0 table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left. TRTD/TR/table. The Celestial Society was an organization made up of Starlords and gods. It was probably a name given by a certain Starlord. According to the grammar of the heavenly world, the word celestial represented both the heavenly world and the world of gods. But no matter what, this proved that the two worlds had long since come into contact. It just so happened that Gunan's arrangements in Blood City had reached the final stage. Next, he just had to wait for the Blood Breeds and Clear River Pavilion to awaken Kane's left hand. At this point, this matter no longer had much to do with Gunan. He just needed to watch the show. Unsealing Kane's left hand was a relatively complicated process. It didn't just require killing a lot of people. Otherwise, Gunan wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. He could just capture a group of people and kill them. In order to awaken Kane's left hand, 3 or more blood breeds had to kill their opponents and use their blood to open the first seal. Only then would the hearts of 3 high-ranking blood breeds be used to open the second seal. Moreover, the final unsealing of Kane's left hand could only be completed by mortals. At most, players would be the aureole behind the scenes. The reason why the quest was so complicated was also to make the game more interesting. In reality, the Undead Kingdom was no longer a map at the beginner's village level. When players arrived here, their basic strength was around grade 5 or even higher. So in order to prevent players from directly crushing the quest with their strength, the truly valuable items were more complicated to obtain. They wouldn't let players kill the big boss and drop equipment. Originally, if nothing happened, Gu Nan didn't mind staying behind to control the overall situation in case something unexpected happened. But now, he was even more interested in something else. The mysterious Celestial Society had already attracted all of Gu Nan's attention. As for the Blood Race's divine artifact, Zhong Dai and Shana, as well as the young girl No Return and Violet Lightning who were waiting far away in Skeleton City, they could all be tossed aside. Elemental Plane. Gu Nan and Sylvia's figures appeared here, surrounded by a lightning storm. This was the unique scenery of the elemental plane. This naturally formed elemental storm was enough to make it difficult for legendary powerhouses to move. Only elemental creatures could walk on it like it was flat ground. Of course, with Gu Nan's strength, they could ignore this mere elemental storm. The worldview of the Pantheon world was different from that of the heavenly world. The most typical characteristic was that all the primary planes in the world of gods did not belong to any particular god. Instead, they were owned by two major god systems. There was even a neutral primary plane like the undead nation. Unlike the heavenly worlds, the true major planes were all astral realms belonging to almighty beings. Perhaps there were neutral planes, but the reason for their existence was that they were too small, and no astral lord was interested in them. The elemental plane that Gu Nan was currently in was a classic example of a neutral plane. This plane was not suitable for the survival of any corporeal lifeforms. Only elemental creatures could live well here, so even the gods had no interest in it. Sylvia had brought Gu Nan here to meet the other members of the Celestial Society. They did not have to wait too long. An indescribable aura descended upon them. Sylvia's eyes lit up, but Gu Nan was the first to speak. Lorenza, the goddess of flowers, Lorenza, was a powerful god with rank 10 power. She was only one step away from becoming a main god. Back when a water element godhead had appeared in the heavenly worlds, the Lan siblings had mysteriously appeared there. This had puzzled Gu Nan for a long time. How did they get to the heavenly worlds, and how did they know the whereabouts of the godhead? Now that he thought about it, it was most likely because Lorenza had joined the Celestial Society. In fact, she might have already infiltrated the heavenly world. The heavenly worlds were naturally filled with countless planes, making them much more suitable for hiding. If they hid in a small plane, not even the 13 Starlords would be able to detect them. A woman dressed in a black and white nun's robe with an ice-cold expression slowly walked out of the boundless storm. Thunder and lightning crisscrossed around her, but she could not advance an inch. Even though this was an elemental plane where only elemental creatures existed, this woman was able to create a scene of hundreds of flowers blooming around her. She did not even need to use her divine power. Just her existence alone was enough to affect the laws of reality. This was the terror of a rank 10 great god. A newcomer? Lorenza's gaze shifted to Gu Nan. She carefully examined him for a moment before frowning. What an astonishingly powerful divine body. Gu Nan smiled and said, I came from that side. He did not explicitly say what that side was, but Lorenza clearly understood. She nodded and did not say anything else. The only difference between gods was that they had different godhoods. There was no such thing as a different cultivation path. There was no god with an especially powerful divine body. Even the fallen god of strength could only withstand 2 more attacks from his divine power. Once he lost his divine power, he would still be useless. However, the heavenly worlds were different. There were cultivators who walked the path of body refinement. The Mountain River World's Starlord, Ishan, whom Gu Nan had met before, was actually half a Starlord. Lorenza greeted Sylvia again and fell silent. She didn't want to talk to the two of them. This was the goddess of flourishing flowers' personality. Gu Nan had already expected this, so he did not take it to heart. Not long after Lorenza's arrival, 2 more people quickly arrived. One of them was Sky God Clive, and the other was a Starlord. As soon as the Starlord saw Gu Nan, he smiled and said, I was wondering who came from that side and could trap Sylvia. So it's you, Your Excellency Gu Nan. The person who spoke had the demeanor of an immortal. He was an old man dressed like a Taoist priest. The long white beard on his chin reached his chest. I'm Ling Yangzi from the Xianxing world. Greetings, fellow Taoists. The old Taoist smiled faintly and bowed, looking very approachable. Gu Nan also greeted him unhurriedly, but he knew very well that this Taoist Ling Yang was not as kind as he looked. The Xianxing world was a relatively rare star realm in the heavenly worlds because the position of its starlord was determined by the sex inheritance. There was Xianxing school in the Xianxing world, and every sect master of Xianxing Dao school was the starlord of the Xianxing world. This Taoist Ling Yang was able to win the position of starlord from dozens of generations of his fellow disciples, so he couldn't be a simple person. Since everyone's here, let's begin. Lorenza's calm and emotionless voice interrupted the two people's pleasantries. According to the Heavenly Gods Society's internal procedures, a new member must be recommended by at least one official member and must complete an internal commission under the witness of 3 other members. This rule was set when the Heavenly Gods Society was first established. Its purpose was to show the Heavenly Gods Society's purpose, which was to help each other and exchange what they needed. Chapter 320. Start of add-on title. End of add-on title 1 text chapter 360 Kane's left hand /H1 A style equals color. Hashtag 00F. Ref equals iml. Next chapter /Adablilager border equals 0 table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left. TRTD/TR/table. After hearing Gu Nan's words, Laurentia and the other two didn't feel anything. Even the sky god Clive was considering it seriously. It's not impossible, if Sylvia doesn't mind. The 3 of them had only received Sylvia's message, and came to witness the new member. They didn't know what happened earlier. Sylvia was the only one who stared at Gu Nan in a daze, as if she was shocked by his shamelessness. Noticing her expression, Taoist Spirit's son asked curiously, "What was your request earlier?" Sylvia rolled her eyes and pointed at Gu Nan. "Keep an eye on him. It's not impossible just from the process." The old Taoist's smile turned somewhat awkward as he said this. "Sure." Clive continued to be serious, and his expression did not even change. The sky god was one of the most powerful gods, but his personality was too weird. It was said that nobody had ever seen his other expressions. The god of flowers didn't even say a word. She just stared at Gu Nan silently. The 3 of them didn't think much of the request in the first place. Any normal god wouldn't be troubled by a request. After all, conflicts between deities were rare in this world. Most requests came from those below the level of deities. For example, Sylvia received Lu Xian's request. Letter. If she hadn't run into Gu Nan, a regular legendary expert would have been captured by her shadow and wouldn't be released until everything was over. The so-called entrustment process, to put it bluntly, was to give the official members a chance to observe the new member and determine his background and strength. Gu Nan could be considered a famous junior in the All Heavens, so there wasn't much to investigate. So Gu Nan shrugged and said, "Then, am I in?" Lorenza nodded and said, "Yes. There are some principles that Sylvia will tell you. When you return, remember to visit her." Supreme Sword Heaven's Lord Schwerin, Taoist Spirit's son, added with a smile. "That's right," Lorenza added. Clearly, she wasn't too familiar with the division of the heavenly planes. After saying that, she didn't want to stay any longer and left in a hurry. Extreme Sword Heaven's Gu Nan also knew that Star Lord Schwerin had just risen in the past tens of thousands of years. He wasn't considered a veteran Star Lord, but his strength couldn't be underestimated. Schwerin was called the Sword Saint, which was a title among the Star Lords. It was self-evident how valuable it was. Many people in the heavenly planes believed that if one day the 13th sky became the 14th sky, the extra one would definitely be Schwerin. Gu Nan understood that given Schwerin's status, he was probably one of the people in charge of the Celestial Gods Association in the heavenly planes. After Lorenza left, Clive didn't linger. He said to Gu Nan with a straight face, "Welcome, newcomer. If there's a chance, you can come to my divine kingdom as a guest." Although his tone and expression didn't seem like an invitation at all, Gu Nan knew that this was already a very sincere invitation. Taoist Spirit Sun was a little more straightforward. "This old Taoist will be returning to the heavenly planes in a few days. Would you like to come with me?" "I still have something to do," Gu Nan refused without even thinking about it. He then pointed to himself. Yes, a request. Now he thought of this again. By the time Gu Nan returned to the kingdom of the dead, the belly of Four Seasons Mountain had already become a river of blood. Many forces had fought, almost causing chaos in the entire bloody city. Everything was just as Gu Nan had expected. The Raymond clan had split into two groups. One group went to slaughter the Clear River Pavilion in Bloody City, while the other group went to the belly of Four Seasons Mountain. They had received the news a little later than Lu Xian, so they were naturally more powerful than her. Was she worth the Sword of Death? Was she willing to give him the Sword of Death? Their actions just happened to undo the first seal, and their soaring power immediately exposed both sides, attracting the attention of the entire city. This time, it was the vampires' turn to be unlucky. The various powerhouses who had been attracted over didn't care about the Clear River Pavilion. Instead, they were certain that the seal was definitely opened by the vampires, and they were the most competitive. The Clear River Pavilion had found a breather. Lu Xian? Ji Chun Fu Ba? Heap? Xiao Bai Shun Chu Can Xie. In the midst of the chaos, the vampires, who were normally very difficult to find, seemed to have become worthless. What's sealed here is Kane's left hand? Sylvia stood on the distant horizon, looking down at the chaotic battle below, but she could still accurately sense the aura within the seal. Kane's left hand, this vampire divine weapon, was still very famous. Even the Shadow Goddess had heard of it, and it was said to be an item that could slay gods. Gu Nan casually replied, then looked at her in confusion. The three of them have already left, why are you following me? Sylvia tilted her head. I have to explain to you what you need to pay attention to in the organization. Of course, Gu Nan didn't believe such words, but since she wanted to follow him, he didn't take it to heart. The main reason was that he really wasn't familiar with this Shadow Goddess, or else he could easily guess what she was thinking. The Shadow Goddess was really too weak. In the game in his previous life, this kind of god could be killed by a dozen players as soon as they changed classes, and there weren't many good quests on her, so who would have the time to attack her? Of course, Gu Nan wouldn't have thought that Sylvia wanted to see him fight again because of the laws that he controlled. After thinking for a while, she had already determined that the path that Gu Nan was walking on was the true profound meaning of shadow, and that she hadn't made much progress after so many years. She was probably on the wrong path. As the two of them spoke, a red light flashed on the ground. Then, a blood-red coffin slowly emerged and hovered in midair. The coffin didn't have a cover, and the decorations and items inside were revealed. It was an old man wearing a standard knight's suit, but the strange thing was that half of his left hand had been cut off. Get the left hand! Countless shouts came from all around, and everyone stopped at the same time, staring at the sky. The first to make a move was Lu Xian. There was no such rule when it came to using commercial means against people and robbing treasures. Lu Xian, who had been in contact with the planet lords all year round. Zheng? Si Tao Guawan? There was no harm in saying Si Tao Guawan. She stood alone in front of the coffin, and there was a special domain around her. Any person or attack that came close to her would be folded, twisted, and weakened until it was almost non-existent. Her law wasn't purely commercial, but it was related to it. Lu Xian? Si Tao Guawan, Bo Guawan, Tao Guawan, soybean curd bran rank say neon theft? Date? All of you stop. Lu Xin? Swollen Wan Guawan? Ao Yun? June? Hui? Guawan Gua? Lei? Di? Yu Huan? F. After saying that, she said to the people around her, everyone, this divine artifact of the blood race can only be used to its fullest in the hands of the blood race. It's useless for you to take it. As long as you stop today, all the losses will be borne by the Clear River Pavilion. Lu Xin? Si Tao Guawan? Muba Guawan? Old Xiao Miki Guawan? This kind of empty talk wouldn't win anyone's trust, but it could make many people wait and see. Lady Mara was ecstatic and said loudly, as long as you are willing to return the ancestral weapon, we can agree to any request. Lu Xin? Si Tao Guawan Guawan? Si Tao Guawan Guawan? Ben Yu Xiaomi? Now Wan Guawan? Yun Huang? Yuan Ji and Ilong? However, at this moment, she suddenly felt the sunlight behind her dim, as if someone had appeared behind her. Lu Xin? Si Tao Guawan? Chu? Childish Guawan? Bad Gua? Huang Ye? Huang? Shu Gua? Chui talk about herding pom-pom herding pit chopping grass? Chi? This power didn't belong to the mortal world. It was clearly a protective treasure given by Zhong Qinghe. Lu Xin? Only you? Punishment? Trouble? Jiao Guawan? 3 Guawan? Guawan? Shu Gualu? Zhu Guawan? Ji Huang Ru Tsang? However, to her surprise, the other party didn't come to snatch it. Instead, he turned and walked towards the coffin. A woman in a long black dress followed him. She seemed to be puzzled by his actions. She asked about Lu Xin. Is it worth Gu Xiu Wan Guawan? Feng Ji Temple Jun Jun? Gu Nan arrived before the coffin, and with a casual tug, the old man's entire left arm was torn off. Chapter 321. The title starts with ad. End of ad on Title 1 Chapter 361 Norris The Mirror Goda Style equals Color. Hashtag 00F. Ref equals 5682515. HTML next chapter / add border equals 0 table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left trtd /tr table. Cain's left hand was a two-handed staff that could provide a large number of blood breed laws and was very suitable for blood breed players. That's right, it was a two-handed staff. That was why any player who had seen a picture of this weapon in his previous life would not mistake it for someone else. However, there were still many players who made the mistake when playing the game for the first time. It was precisely because of this that the forums in his previous life were often ridiculed about Cain's left hand. There were even people who deliberately misled newbies to satisfy their own evil interests. As a veteran player of many years, Gu Nan would never forget this detail. After listening to Gu Nan's words, Sylvia took a closer look at the arm, but she didn't notice anything special. This was inconceivable to her. After all, even in such a chaotic battlefield, she could clearly sense the aura within the seal. Now that the seal had been broken and Cain's body was right in front of him, why couldn't he be sure that there was anything special about his left hand? However, Gu Nan was very clear about the reason. He casually said, "Look at this hand carefully. Is there anything wrong with it?" Sylvia lowered her head and looked at it for a long time, but she still couldn't see anything. She looked at Gu Nan in confusion. Gu Nan was worried about the shadow goddess's intelligence as he casually waved his hand. Lu Xin? Is the seed embedded in the heart of a stranger who will grow weary in the end? Oval-shaped Benigno Zhongye? Immature. This scene made Lu Xion's heart tremble. Roasted pudding? Leech? Chong Miao? Xiang 3? Put the dice, obediently remonstrated in the vat and hoped for a good harvest? At last the scabbard fades from the bridge, and the four fresh and young. If he could take away half of the palm, then he could naturally take away his heart and even his head. In other words, The talisman that his Star Lord had personally left for him was completely useless in front of this person. After realizing this, Lu Xian was stunned. Tossing Qinghu Tartar to play with? Hale and hearty? Stirring up the Chunshan puppet to suppress the heat? Is it a drought or a fever? Arena no, it couldn't be said to be falling out. At most, it was an adult bullying a child. Not to mention Lu Xian? What about the man in the crowd? Huh? Blowing the front door, Zhongpu? Polypus? Toss aside the delicacies, take the palanquin and wait on the perch. This half of the palm was actually not the same as the arm. It wasn't that someone was substituting someone else. Both of them were indeed things that should be hidden, but the left and right sides weren't quite right. Sylvia took a closer look and realized that the arm was indeed a left hand, but the palm with 4 fingers was clearly a right hand. The shadow goddess turned her head in disbelief and looked at the corpse in the coffin, but the right hand of the corpse was still a right hand. 2 right hands? Cain died at the hands of the mirror deity. Gu Nan saw that she finally understood, so he used the simplest sentence to express his meaning clearly. Mirror god Norris. A mid-level deity whose abilities were only at the 8th level, but he had once thrown the entire world of gods into chaos, and was the fuse that ignited the 4th War of the Gods. Any deity who had lived through that period would not be unfamiliar with the name Norris. Sylvia was the younger sister of the god of light and justice, and was born almost at the same time as him. She was also one of the oldest deities, so of course she would know the mirror deity. It was also because of this that she deeply understood how strange Norris' power was. Through the law of mirrors, he could project an object into the image in the mirror, and even create a corresponding object in the world of the mirror. He could do it with objects, people, and even deities. In the end, the insane Norris tried to replicate the entire world, which incurred the wrath of the masses. However, Norris wasn't a fool. He had roped in a group of deities beforehand, which eventually led to the outbreak of the 4th War of the Gods. Cain had died at the hands of Norris, so it wasn't too difficult to understand that a section of his left hand had been reflected by the mirror. Sylvia had even imagined that a mirror had appeared in front of Cain, and he had tried to run out of its range, but in the end, a section of his left hand had been cut off. Fortunately, Norris had been missing for tens of thousands of years. As her thoughts returned from her imagination, Sylvia heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, she suddenly realized that if this fellow called Gu Nan was so knowledgeable about everything, then what was he going to do with Cain's left hand? An inexplicable fear surfaced in her heart. She looked up abruptly, but realized that Gu Nan had already disappeared. Find Gu Nan, I don't care what you do. Sylvia sat in the Blood Club, with vampire princes from the blood breeds and powerhouses from other forces below her. But at this moment they all bowed respectfully. Yes, Your Highness. Faced with a true deity, they had no reason or right to refuse. Even if Sylvia belonged to the light god system, and many of them were backed by the dark god, but a neutral plane was a neutral plane, and protection was not faith. Furthermore, it wasn't during the War of the Gods, and the relationship between the 2 major god systems wasn't as tense as imagined. Sylvia and the Sky God were both from the light god system, but the goddess of flowers was from the dark god system. When the 3 of them had met earlier, it had been a harmonious atmosphere, and they didn't seem to have any intention of fighting. Sitting in the hall, Sylvia's expression was very solemn. She still couldn't be sure what Gu Nan's objective was, but if she couldn't find any traces of Gu Nan after a long time, she would choose to send the news back to the light god system, or even her brother. She wasn't making a mountain out of a molehill, but the lunatic Norris was simply too terrifying, and she couldn't take him too seriously. However, what Sylvia didn't expect was that after just a few days, Gu Nan's whereabouts would be reported to her. This fellow had no intention of hiding at all, and had just swaggered into the Blood Club, and was even peeking at the embrace? Pervert. Sylvia didn't hesitate to use this word to describe Gu Nan, and her gaze showed that she indeed thought so in her heart. The embrace of the blood breeds was even more secretive than the process of mating. After all, mating was only for mutual pleasure, and the embrace was the true way to develop offspring, and vampires couldn't get pregnant. However, Gu-nan didn't just watch, he even participated in it personally. Don't be mistaken, he participated by dripping the golden origin blood in his hand into Zhong Dai's body. The process of Zhong Dai's blood feeding was much faster than Gu-nan had expected. Previously, when Gu-nan had gotten Kane's left hand, he hadn't had the chance to chat with Sylvia for long before he realized that Zhong Dai was already prepared for the embrace. This extremely unique blood fetishist was indeed a natural candidate for the blood breed. As she had been drinking blood for a long time, her digestive system had long gotten used to this eating habit, to the point where she had to mix normal food with blood in order to properly digest and absorb it. For a human with a normal bloodline to be able to torment herself to this extent, Zhong Dai really wasn't an ordinary person. Chapter 322. Start of ad. End of ADH1 text chapter 362 Finding the door /H1 A style equals color. Hashtag 00F. Ref equals iml. Next chapter /Adablilager border equals 0 table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left. TRTD/TR/table Christina was a girl with long brown hair and a face that wasn't too hard. Mobile phones didn't have ads, so it was a good idea to save data. She had just embraced Zhong Dai, so her face was still a little pale, but she still looked at Gu-nan and Sylvia, who had just appeared, warily. "Who are you?" Christina looked at the two of them, but her hands didn't move much. These two people who could appear in front of her without a sound were obviously not simple. Christina's voice was very crisp, as if she were a real girl. Gu-nan also knew that she wasn't very old, and was one of the few young vampires. If the players did not intervene, she would become the future leader of the Raymond clan and lead this clan of vampires to serve under a powerful god. She would even be involved in the final divine war. But right now she was just a little girl who hadn't even reached the legendary realm. "Don't worry, I'm her friend." Gu-nan smiled and pointed at Zhong Dai, who was lying unconscious on the bed, her body emitting a strong smell of blood. Sylvia noticed the blood bottle in Gu-nan's hand and asked in confusion, "This is the origin of the vampires?" The origin of the vampires was, of course, the blood of their ancestors. Yes. Gu-nan nodded casually, knowing that the other party was confused about the origin of this thing, and Sylvia took a deep breath and said, "You'll kill her. Using the origin of the vampires on a normal person is incompatible." Gu-nan glanced at her but didn't say anything. He had heard the phrase incompatible physique many times in the game, so he was no stranger to it. This was because the blood race's origin was something specially prepared for players. The natives didn't have the fortune to enjoy it. If he were to ask the gods, he would get the answer. His constitution is incompatible. In fact, if it wasn't for the fact that this route was for players to change their class to the blood tribe, there wouldn't have been two foreign blood tribe members. Now that Gu-nan had used it on Zhong Dai, he wanted to try and get Zhong Dai to walk the path of a player. If this step of hers was feasible, Gu-nan even wanted to do the same and create more main character NPCs. This was not the only way for players to change their class in his mind. Of course, the natives wouldn't be able to play the game as it was meant for players. If the natives of the Pantheon world could not do it, then what about the people from the heavenly world? Gu-nan stared at Zhong Dai's face, his gaze deep and even somewhat expectant. As for the risk he was taking to experiment on a little girl like Zhong Dai, this was not within Gu-nan's consideration. After all, he wasn't the one taking the risk. After an unknown amount of time, Zhong Dai's breathing was still steady, but she showed no signs of waking up. She had been unconscious for far longer than a normal blood tribe's embrace. As she had not eaten for a long time, Zhong Dai's lips were already chapped. Sylvia was very sure that the origin could not be fused with a normal person. It's no use. She'll die soon. Under normal circumstances, she would have died long ago, Gu Nan said with certainty. Even a legendary blood tribe's first embrace wouldn't last more than half an hour on average. The word average made Sylvia frown, as if she had heard countless bloody words. After a while, Gu Nan's wait was not in vain. Zhong Dai actually woke up. Her gaze was slightly dazed as she looked around in confusion, as if she had no idea where she was. Without saying a word, Gu Nan waved his hand and cut Zhong Dai's arm with a shadow blade. The latter immediately bled profusely. But what was surprising was that her blood was actually dark gold in color. It's done. Gu Nan's heart skipped a beat. Using the body of a native of the myriad worlds could indeed break the biological boundaries of NPCs. The excruciating pain woke her up, and Zhong Dai immediately shrieked and hurriedly pulled her hand back. Then, she discovered to her surprise that the wound on her arm had already stopped bleeding, and the wound was even showing signs of forming a scab. As expected of a blood tribe, Zhong Dai exclaimed, thinking that it was because of the body of a blood tribe. Christina, however, widened her eyes. As a blood tribe member, she knew better than anyone that a newly born vampire could not possibly have such an ability. In the following days, Gu Nan swaggered into the blood club and trained Zhong Dai every day, as well as testing her various data. The final conclusion was that Zhong Dai's fusion with the blood tribe's origin was very successful. She was almost no different from a player, except that she lacked the body of an evil god. On the other hand, because Kane's left hand was still in Gu Nan's hands, the Raymond clan welcomed him with open arms. Of course, if it wasn't for the terrifying power he had shown earlier, the blood tribe wouldn't have welcomed him like this. Facing a great figure who was suspected to be a god, even the Raymond clan didn't dare to say anything threatening. They only hoped to use their resources to exchange for their ancestors' weapon, or wait until Gu Nan was in a good mood and give them this divine weapon. In fact, Gu Nan had already rejected more than 20 blood tribe members, all of whom came to his door and threw themselves into his arms. The blood tribe had always had this tradition of using their good looks to their advantage. Fortunately, more than half of those who came to his door were women. Gu Nan tested Zhong Dai in all aspects, including her physical strength, recovery ability, speed, law acuity, and even her appearance. He evaluated all of them one by one. These data were strictly recorded, fully showing the entire process of Zhong Dai's body being transformed by the blood tribe's origin. Until 2 months later, Zhong Dai had almost become a different person. She now had a head of long blonde hair, fair and flawless skin, and charming brown pupils. Even her height had increased by a few centimeters, making her look tall and well-proportioned. This appearance would probably make Lu Xian, Di Chu, Jiaduan Gu Nan. On this day, Gu Nan was still training little Zhong Dai as usual, when suddenly there was a commotion outside. What happened? Zhong Dai asked impatiently before Gu Nan could react. Zhong Dai was tortured by Gu Nan's training plan, and she couldn't wait for something to happen. What happened has nothing to do with you. Christina extinguished Zhong Dai's fantasy with a bucket of cold water. As Zhong Dai's senior, she would occasionally come to supervise Zhong Dai's training. Zhong Dai couldn't help but pout, but Gu Nan smiled and said, "This time, it really has something to do with her." Outside the blood club, Lu Xian? To Jing? She was afraid of Yun? Kong Kue Gu Eci Du? Fourth cleansing. Ms. Mara didn't like the Clear River Pavilion at all. She sneered and said, "It depends on whether the master wants to see you or not." Lu Xian? Ji Xing Xing Ai? The Emperor invaded the soft pole? Giant clam herding reef chisel moraine. For the sake of these two people, I believe you will be willing to give me this opportunity. Chapter 323. Add-on. The title begins. Add on the title H1 text chapter 363 results /H1 A style equals color. Hashtag 00F. Ref equals iml. Next chapter /add border equals 0 table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left. TRTD/TR/table outside the blood club, the atmosphere had already sunk into a strange silence. None of the vampires present recognized Shauna and Violet Lightning. Needless to say, although Shauna was a member of the Raymond clan, she was classified as a defector. Before she defected, she was nothing more than a transparent person without any sense of existence. And being unable to recognize the identity of the two meant that they couldn't proceed with the next step of the plan. Lady Mara was already somewhat regretful. If she had known earlier, she wouldn't have personally come out to deal with Lu Xin in order to curry favor with that person. Utmost forgiveness if the one receiving them was just a junior, then she wouldn't have even thought about letting them in. At worst, she would be tricked by the other party once, and it wouldn't be a loss of face. But she was standing here, if she let Lu Xin in? Paper? Fat? Hydra? For heroes hurrying to the river to stop? Protect? Pry? Yun? Rely on the banana? Clean up the scene. Vampires were a very special race. In private, they could do unimaginably despicable acts, but in front of others, they were incomparably mindful of their face. Lu Xin? Ji Chuang Huihui? Miao Mu Cunning? Wan Nai? Cool? Huang Bai Gu Bao? Worrying in bed? Is the mirage afraid of Yun Yun? But the giant clam, she could not help but feel anxious. Only the heavens knew what kind of price the Clear River Pavilion had paid in order to stall young girl Wu Gue. To put it bluntly, Lu Xin? Asking her out on a date and saying she's a man? Huang Benlai? Scratching my head? Yun? Ka. However, her action saved Ms. Mara the trouble. Anyway, the movement had already been made, so it was reasonable for her to take the opportunity to inform Gu Nan. What is it? Gu Nan arrived faster than they expected. He was accompanied by a blonde girl who stood behind him with a reserved expression. I finally get to see you, Lu Xin? Cut the hair? A pet? She knew that the person in front of her had the ability to kill her easily, but she had come here with the determination to die, so she was not afraid. If he didn't even have the courage to face death, how could he bring Zhong Dai back? Lu Xin? Was he suffering from an evil spirit? Making a pact? Liao? Corpses fall to the ground and leave the palanquin? Radon Jian instantly changing the mountain? Sangku? What the hell? Worried about Yong Yi's milk Ping Jiaogue? Glimpsed the armor model? Pretended to be a bad person? Milk? Teach the teacher to warn the corridor. As he said this, Lu Xin? Judge Neon? There was no one in this world without a weakness. Although Gu Nan was terrifyingly strong, as long as he wanted something, there would be a weakness. Lu Xin? Was he? Yong Yi's grave? Was he? She followed Gu Nan all the way to the world of gods, believing that he needed Wu Gue and Violet Lightning's help. On the other hand, she investigated Gu Nan's behavior in Blood City. From the flower-selling girl to Shauna, it was only logical that Shauna was also captured. If even these two could not move Gu Nan, then Lu Xin? Loyal to Ichichi? Alpha Priest Chichi? Chase? Lu Xin? Zhong Xin squatting tidy? Zheng? Mei Yong Yi can resist misfortune beating Sishi skeleton dad Ash? Embrace? D. Yongshu? Yongyi? Shui Shua Tiaowen? Chi Mang? Kuyong? Lu Xin? Questioning Di Chichi Huan Si Xiaolina? Scandium? Wan Wujia invading skeleton aperture is like W chanting oyster sack Huan Si? Ing? Kaji? Song? Jijia Wan Ting? But she did not expect that Gu Nan's response was to turn around and pat the blonde girl's shoulder. Go and say hello. Following Gu Nan's voice, Lu Xin? Locusts making trouble, Sister Lu. The blonde girl, Zhong Dai, called out with her still crisp voice, as if nothing had happened. She even skipped over to Lu Xian. Young Jijia? Zhong Dai, who had grown taller, was already shorter than Lu Xian. Only hanging? Qi Ping Huang? Qi Li Luo? Ba Yu Su Mu Zhao? Wu Jiao said Na Yang Lo? Vinegar? Lu Xian? Zhong Ji Pan punishment? Vinegar Pangya? Qi? Right? Making trouble? Yuan Chu Ji Chao Kuju? Shi? Yi Ping Huang Jijia? Scratching white mark? You went through with the embrace? She asked, dumbfounded. Yes. Zhong Dai still had an innocent look on her face. Even Gu Nan did not expect that Zhong Dai would be able to prepare for the embrace so quickly. Lu Xian? Comparable to Huan? Kissing and teasing Pry? Poking the roundworm and howling boat choice? She was stuck at this point for almost 2 months. Only with this much time, she could make sufficient preparations and snatch the purple lightning away. But now, Zhong Dai only used 2 words to shatter all her calculations and plans. It was like a bolt from the blue. How could this be? Student Lu's mind was a mess, and she did not know what to say. Let's go and continue training. Gu Nan's unhurried words could be heard. Zhong Dai, who did not have time to reminisce, could only purse her lips and walk back obediently. Ever since she woke up, she had never disobeyed Gu Nan's orders. Gu Nan's words were more effective than Christina's. This was a very normal thing. Christina was her direct predecessor, and Gu Nan was the one who channeled the origin blood into her. From the perspective of vampires, if Gu Nan was her biological father, Christina could only be a surrogate mother, or even a test tube. No! Lu Xian? Suffocating locusts? Fashi Che is lying? Third flounder? Out! She grabbed Zhong Dai's wrist and said in a low voice, even if you have accepted the embrace, I still have to bring you back. Maybe, Lu Xian? Be on duty at the screen raking the Mongols and cursing the horses? Bad worker Hua Uranium? Scratching the white beard leisurely? Qiaozong? Remonstrance? Zhu Zheng? Inche? Ditch collision? Her hand that was holding Zhong Dai's hand was also pushed away by those tentacles, and then she quickly fell into the shadows. Lu Xian, who had been dragged to the ground and whose entire body had disappeared into the shadows. Zheng? Huang'o kidnapped Pakhen obediently and brought him to school? Stirring Su Pao desolate arc with even wind. Could it be that he didn't care about their lives at all? Lu Xian? Pouring water on a mound? Playing? Leech? What? What the F***? This extremely strange scene made everyone's scalp go numb. Even the vampires had never seen such a way of killing. What was even more strange was that not long after, a black shadow started to move in the shadows and quickly formed a new human figure. What is the method to remove the goo? Gu Nan asked casually. The shadow started to report the dishes dutifully: blue heart grass, silver moon hoarfrost, eagle's hind claw. Ever since his first-class advancement, Gu Nan rarely used the rule of rebirth, but that didn't mean he didn't know how to use it. On the contrary, as his strength grew, the rule of rebirth was much more effective when used on low-level opponents. He could inherit most of the memories from when he was alive. Of course, it was almost completely useless on God. This is also an application of the shadows? Sylvia's figure appeared beside Gu Nan and looked at the shadow servant in surprise. Chapter 324. Start with ad on the title. End with ad on the title. 1 Text Chapter 364. Save money /H1 A style equals color #00F ref equals iml. Next chapter /Adablilager border equals 0 table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left table border equals 0 align equals left. TRTD/TR/table. Sylvia had been following Gu Nan all this time. She was still worried that Gu Nan might have some ulterior motives for the mirror god. After knowing that Gu Nan was going to use Kane's left hand soon, she decided to follow him and see what Gu Nan was going to do with it. On the other hand, she was also very curious about the other Shadow Master. In the end, the heavens did not disappoint those who waited. Sylvia had managed to wait until Gu Nan made his move, and his first move was a power that she had never seen before. The power of shadows can also be used to create life? Sylvia muttered. Her mind was already filled with the term, shadow revival, that Gu Nan coined, and there was no room for anything else. Gu Nan smiled strangely. He didn't mind giving Sylvia the wrong path. After all, whether this shadow goddess was on the right path or wrong path, she wouldn't make any progress even after tens of thousands of years. Maybe if he gave her a nonsensical path, she would be able to open up a whole new world? Gu Nan shook his head and left Lady Mara with Purple Lightning and Shauna, asking her to help him find the antidote. Lu Xian? Is it worth the octagonal? Gadu Man's Edge Emperor's Cliff Chi? Both? Mo Injian. But it didn't matter. There were more of these in the Clear River Pavilion. He could just find some people to test the antidote on. 2 days. He could make it in time. Of course, Gu Nan didn't know whether the information was detailed or not, but he didn't really care about their lives. The Purple Lightning was just a bonus. Of course, it would be best if Shauna could survive. If not, Gu Nan still had Christina as a substitute. He was not indispensable. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that they were in a hurry, a traditional genius like Christina would be more suitable to be the head of the family than Shauna in terms of personality and prestige. Gu Nan didn't have to wait too long. After a short 2 days, Purple Bolt and Shauna, both in perfect condition, stood in front of Gu Nan. The Raymond clan was quite capable, especially when they needed Gu Nan's help. At the same time, Wu Gui, who had not been seen for a long time, also rushed over. No Return was in a sorry state. Her exquisite Kasaya was somewhat damaged, and she had even put away the lotus seat she was sitting on. She had rushed over on foot. The foundation of the Clear River realm was not to be underestimated. Zheng? Turbulence? Time? Waymo Yen Zheng? Drumming Gorgon offering smoked palm neon. You sure are comfortable. You left us in Skeleton City, and then fell out with the people of the Clear River realm. No Return looked at the calm expression on Gu Nan's face and immediately became angry. With her and the Purple Lightning's patience, waiting for 2 months was nothing. However, the people of the Clear River Pavilion suddenly attacked them, which was really unexpected. It could be said that Gu Nan's act of kidnapping Zhong Dai had indirectly caused trouble for the two of them. However, Gu Nan shrugged and didn't take it to heart. He never cared what others thought. As long as it didn't affect his plan, he didn't care who died. You're here just in time. I sent these vampires to investigate the holy tomb of the undead. We'll set off once there's a result, Gu Nan said to No Return. In his original plan, he was going to use the vampires to find the entrance to the holy tomb. Lu Xian? Loyal as a fish? Let's wait. I hope we don't have to wait too long this time. Wu Gui couldn't do anything about him and could only say this. Gu Nan naturally ignored her. His daily work was still to train Zhong Dai. Oh, and now there was one more thing, which was to help Shauna run for clan leader. Because the Raymond clan still had the God of Steel behind them, if Gu Nan didn't want to completely expose himself here, he couldn't directly kidnap everyone. The way he helped Shauna was also very simple. He gave her Kane's left hand. As soon as Shauna received this magic staff, she fused her own blood source with it, making this divine artifact her own. From then on, unless she died, she was the only one who could use this staff. This was a huge advantage in the election. The ancestral staff could directly increase the purity of the blood of the vampires and indirectly increase the strength of the vampires. Now that it was in Shauna's hands, even if the entire clan could use it, only Shauna could use it. And with so many people in the clan, they would have to line up, right? Shauna, as the owner of the divine artifact, would undoubtedly have the greatest say in who would use it first and who would use it the longest. Even if she treated everyone equally on the surface, it was very easy for her to tamper with the operation. As the days passed, Shauna's position in the Raymond clan became more and more stable, and the voice of becoming the next clan leader also became louder and louder. At this time, an entrance to the Holy Tomb of the Undead was found. The Holy Tomb of the Undead was indeed a very mysterious place. Not only did it have 9 entrances, but each one was constantly changing. Almost every once in a while they would appear in different locations. Gunnan's luck was good this time. One of the entrances was not far from the Bloody City, and with his speed, he could reach it in 2 days. Yorktown was also the place where the Holy Tomb of the Undead was found this time. 3 figures slowly appeared at the entrance of the town. "It's on that mountain," said a young man in a white robe among the 3. Beside him were 2 women. One was wearing a golden robe, but her expression was as cold as frost. The other was wearing a black dress, and her eyes kept wandering around. The 3 quickly walked toward the mountain peak, and someone immediately came to stop them at the foot of the mountain. "Who are you? In front is—" Before they could finish their questions, the young man in the white robe lightly waved his hand, and they were all swallowed into the shadows. These 3 were naturally Gunnan's party. He had brought Girl No Return to the Holy Tomb of the Undead, and Sylvia had also followed. So cruel! Sylvia shook her head, expressing her opinion of Gunnan's actions. Girl No Return looked at her doubtfully. In the former's eyes, this person was obviously a Star Lord, and really shouldn't be so sentimental. Gunnan only smiled. He understood that the gods of the world of gods had a closer relationship with mortals than Star Lords. After all, they still needed faith. This entrance to the Holy Tomb of the Undead was obviously not the first to be discovered by Gunnan. On the way up the mountain, there were people guarding along the way. However, news of a powerful enemy attack spread very quickly, and after a few waves of people died at Gunnan's hands, no one else dared to stop them. When Gunnan's party reached the top of the mountain, they saw a cave entrance that flickered with faint fluorescent light. It was already surrounded by a group of powerhouses of various types. This was obviously not the publicly recognized entrance, so everyone was blocked outside. At the same time, there were also those who did not give up and tried to use their own methods to crack it. Gunnan merely glanced at the sign outside the cave, then smiled at Girl No Return and said, "You're quite lucky." No Return's luck was indeed quite good. They had randomly found an entrance that corresponded to the tomb of the living dead. Perhaps Gunnan's words were heard by some of the people around them, as someone immediately surrounded them and said with a smile, "Do the 3 of you want to try and crack the entrance puzzle? You only need to pay 300 divine power coins each." Sylvia looked at this person speechlessly. She did not expect that even a holy tomb of the undead that they could not open could become a way to rake in money. However, she did not care about this bit of divine power coins. A place like the holy tomb of the undead was obviously better for them to sneak in. Meanwhile, Gunnan continued to walk forward, and the man who came up to speak to him did not mind. He only smiled and blocked Gunnan's path. The few chambers of commerce working together to control the entrance was enough to bully ordinary powerhouses. If it were a true powerhouse, they would not care about this bit of money. After all, the fewer people who knew about the holy tomb of the undead, the better. He believed that no one would be willing to publicize this place. However, in the next moment, his head flew into the sky and fell heavily to the ground at the side, whereas Gunnan didn't even spare a glance at him.